Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to one of the best days of a Formula One season, one of the most anticipated days of Formula One season, qualifying day in Monaco. It has been always one of the best parts of a Formula One season, especially in these last few years where we've not had a ton of excitement. And today we are perfectly set up for a fantastic battle, not only for pole position, but for pretty much all the positions through the field, because the field is incredibly close. Of course, the regulations being left alone for so long has allowed this to happen, thankfully. And yeah, we are in for a very good qualifying session this afternoon. And probably a 3 to 4 way battle for pole position, possibly. I think at least a 2 way battle between two separate drivers driving for two separate teams. But again, looking outside of the battle for pole position, the battle for all of the positions very much up for contention. And of course, Monaco all about or not all about, but very much about the drivers, in terms of the drivers nailing their laps, getting it right. And if you do, you can have a wonderful day here in Monaco and a wonderful weekend. But if anyone out there, even the very best, if they make a big enough mistake, it can be incredibly costly, as we've seen many times over the years. But as you can see, we've got just under an hour and a half to go until qualifying begins. Currently at Monaco, the F2, is it feature race? No, sprint race for F2 is currently going on. Been quite a few accidents so far. Obviously, the F2 boys are always having quite a lot of accidents, even in Monaco. So yeah, we've got just under an hour and a half to go until qualifying, and of course, we will be doing the usual build-up to a qualifying session, going through the most important data of the weekend so far from practice 2 yesterday to see who's quick, who isn't, look at the sector time data to understand why certain teams are, on the pace and why certain teams are off the pace. And of course, I will give my final qualifying prediction, which is, I have to say, when I made it earlier, the graphic, took me a while to decide my top 10 because it is so hard to predict. It really could be anything in qualifying today. So, yeah, very much looking forward to this session. And of course, this is the most important part of the weekend because even though tomorrow's race is a mandatory 2-stop race, tomorrow is going to be dry. And I don't think the teams are going to be taking really any risks with their strategy tomorrow, even though they know they have to pit twice. So, yeah, the Grand Prix tomorrow, really, in terms of the result, is, of course, pretty much decided by what happens today in qualifying. So, yeah, we'll get on to the build-up soon enough. Hope you guys are well. Of course, it is a bank holiday weekend. I think the final bank holiday weekend until August. So, I hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're having a good time at the moment. And no matter what part of the world you're from, no matter what's going on in your part of the world, hope you're all having as best a time as possible. Hope the weather's brilliant wherever you are. And yeah, just in general, I hope you're having as best a time as possible. And I hope you'll be joining me today in either watching along, or if you can't watch the session, at least listening along, because I will keep you absolutely up to date with everything that goes on in this qualifying session at Monaco. Of course, as usual, there is a poll running on the chat where you guys can vote on who do you think will take pole position in Monaco. The 4 options are Charles Leclerc, who of course is the home driver here, and he took pole here last year and in 2022 as well. Max Verstappen, the world champion. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. I could have included Lewis Hamilton in that vote, considering how quick Ferrari have been this weekend. But I think most likely those are the 4 best options for who could get pole position in Monaco today. So, between now and the start of Q3, which will be in about 2 hours and say 10 minutes from now, let me know who do you think takes pole position in Monaco? And right before we get into Q3, I will read out the results of that poll. So you've got plenty of time, again, a couple hours to think up who you think will take pole in the Principality. But let's get into the practice 2 results yesterday. And very much surprising that Ferrari have been so brilliantly quick this weekend. I wouldn't say they are ultimately going to be the quickest, but they have been way quicker this weekend than I think any of us expected. I remember saying in my podcast a few days ago, obviously post Imola, I said that I thought Ferrari would be poor around this track because I didn't think it would suit their car really at all. How wrong was I? Because they have been consistently on it the whole weekend. And even if they don't have, in reality, the best car for qualifying, regardless of that, they are close enough to be absolutely in the fight for pole position. There is no doubt about that whatsoever. Ferrari are very likely, I think, to be on the front row of the grid. And again, whether they take pole position or not, I think is really dependent on the drivers and how they, do their best laps in Q3 compared to, say, the McLaren drivers. Ferrari and McLaren definitely, I wouldn't say in that order, but those are the 2 quickest teams this weekend. No doubt about that. McLaren, as we know, compared to Ferrari on a Friday, do tend to not quite show, I think, as much pace. Ferrari are one of those teams that on a Friday do tend to be a lot more, I won't say going for the headline lap times, but they don't sandbag as much as, say, Mercedes and Red Bull do, and probably as much as, say, McLaren do either. So, yeah, McLaren, in my view, if all the drivers do their absolute best laps in qualifying, I think the McLaren car is the best. Not by miles, it is close, but I think it is the best still. Ferrari, though, again, without doubt, close enough to fight for pole position, even if they don't have the fastest car. It is probably, the gap between McLaren and Ferrari, if McLaren are truly quicker, it's only probably a tenth, I would say, maybe a tenth and a half at most between the teams. So, yeah, we have got a great battle for pole coming up later. Lewis Hamilton third. Hamilton's been, despite his crash in practice 3, in terms of his pace, he's been pretty good this weekend. Hope he keeps it up. Normally in Monaco, he does tend to struggle quite a bit. Getting the setup right. Obviously, we saw that plenty of times in his Mercedes days that it won't always go right for him at Monaco. But so far, with the car looking good, Hamilton's pace has been pretty good. So yeah, Hamilton really should be at least in the top 4, I think, in qualifying today. Lando Norris, though, 4th. And Lando, I'm sorry. I know it's only been, we've only had practice so far, but I think he's had a poor weekend so far. Because if you go and look at, and this happened in practice 1 as well, but in practice 2, if you go and look at Lando's 3 best sectors and put them together, he actually would have been quite a bit quicker in practice 2 than he ended up being. Same thing happened in practice 1. So with Lando ending up in 4th place, when he did that lap, did not put all of his best sectors together. He's just been very inconsistent with his laps this weekend. And it feels to me like that's kind of him setting himself up for failure, really, today. Because you can't be like that in Monaco. You have to absolutely nail it. And Lando has not been doing that really this weekend. I mean, to be quarter of a second away from your teammate in Monaco is, for Lando Norris, it is nowhere near good enough. yes, Oscar is a very good driver, but given that we know Lando at his best can be incredibly quick in qualifying, there is no excuse for him to be that far off his teammate. So Lando is someone who has to step up in qualifying, because if he doesn't and he has another messy qualifying session like he did last week at Imola, he will suffer a lot in this session, and that will hurt significantly his championship bid, especially if Oscar Piastri ends up taking pole position. So, yeah, Lando has got to step it up, because that is nowhere near good enough from him. Liam Lawson up in the top 5. Racing Bulls very quick, which is, again, to me, a surprise. I did not expect this car to be as quick as it was, say, at Imola, where they were pretty quick. Obviously, 2 cars in the top 6 is quite the surprise. And good to see, for once, that Liam Lawson is actually quick and is actually on the pace he should be. Because, no disrespect to Isaac Hadjar, I think Isaac's had a brilliant season so far, but there's no reason why Liam Lawson should be any slower than Hadjar. Hadjar is not the next Max Verstappen, So, yeah, Lawson, someone I've been, I think, very critical of so far this season. Looks like, so far this weekend, he is stepping up, and hopefully that continues, because Racing Bulls, they're 8th in the championship, not that far behind Aston Martin and Haas. If they have 2 drivers who are performing at their best, then really, they should be scoring decent amount of points every Grand Prix. Liam Lawson, of course, hasn't scored a point yet this season. Isaac has scored 10 points, I believe it is. So, is it 10 points? No, 7 points. Sorry. So, yeah. It's good to see that Lawson is finally showing some good pace in that car, because he really needs to if he's going to save his Formula 1 career. But yeah, Racing Bulls, very, very quick, and good to see them keeping up their good form. Fernando Alonso, 7th. I'm pleased to see that Alonso's in the top 10 and in 7th place, but I do feel as though he probably could get ahead of the Racing Bulls cars. We know Alonso is not the best qualifier. He's not terrible at qualifying, but he's not, he's not a Leclerc or Verstappen level in qualifying. But I think personally, from Fernando's point of view, I think he'll be hoping to be probably at the head of the midfield pack, which won't be 5th. I think 5th is going to be occupied probably by the Red Bulls and Mercedes cars. But I think being at the front of that midfield pack, say in 8th place, I think is definitely possible for Fernando. But his, again, I wouldn't say lack of qualifying pace, but just not being quite as great on a qualifying lap as he is so brilliantly in a race situation, I think might just cost him today, because I think that car should be, or not should be, but I think it definitely has the potential to be at the head of the midfield pack. So, yeah, Alonso doing great, don't get me wrong, but I think there is maybe a tad more potential in there in terms of maybe an extra position or 2 he could find today. We'll see how Alonso does. Be great to see him if he was in the top 8 on the grid. Alexander Albon 8th. Williams looking quick. Carlos Sainz didn't have the greatest practice too, but I think Carlos will deliver in Q3 because he has been consistently pretty good here, has Carlos. Been one of his best tracks, has Monaco. Talking of Carlos Sainz, though, I did just see on X that he is under investigation for a potential red flag infringement. I'll just try to load my X quickly, but for some reason It's yeah, X has gone down. That website has been absolutely terrible in the last couple of days. But yeah, Carlos Sainz is under investigation for a potential red flag infringement. I hope for his sake that he's not done anything wrong. Oliver Behrman has been given a 10-place penalty for overtaking a car under a red flag, which, if you look at the actual incident, incredibly harsh, given how the car he overtook was basically stopped, or it was going that slow, and Behrman, when he overtook, I mean, the red flag had only just come out. So yeah, I think very harsh penalty there for Behrman. I have just seen, though, an onboard replay of Franco Colapinto, who has clearly overtaken Lance Stroll under a red flag. So Colapinto and Behrman will probably be on the back row of the grid for the Monaco Grand Prix tomorrow. Hopefully, though, Carlos Sainz does not receive also a 10-place penalty, because I think if Sainz today can deliver his absolute potential in that car, I think he could be definitely in the top 7 or 8 on the grid. The Williams car is looking good. It's not looking as good as I expected. I thought they would be ahead of, to be honest, Racing Bulls and Aston Martin. But they're looking good enough that they can get at least one car, not only in the top 10, but in a good position as well. So, yeah. Williams still looking good. Antonelli 9th for Mercedes. Mercedes will improve in qualifying. There's no doubt about that. They're not going to be, 9th, and I think 12th is where George Russell ended up in practice too. But they definitely don't have the pace of Ferrari and McLaren. That is clear to see. And that is disappointing, because I really thought Mercedes would be probably the closest contender for McLaren this weekend. But it just isn't the case. They look to be about a third of a second a lap off the pace of McLaren and possibly Ferrari as well, which is, yeah, disappointing. George Russell or Kimi Antonelli are going to have to produce an absolutely incredible lap if they're going to be on the podium tomorrow. That's all I'm going to say. They're not going to be, qualifying's not going to be terrible for them, but a top 3, I think, is really just too far for them. That car just isn't quick enough. And then you've got Max Verstappen 10th. Now, we know Red Bull, they tend to sandbag the most on a Friday compared to any other team. But also, Verstappen was blocked on many laps yesterday, to the amusement of some of us, because some of the onboard footage of him getting mad at other drivers was quite funny. But yeah, Verstappen will be a lot better in qualifying. There is no doubt about that. Max, I think, will be at worst on the 3rd row of the grid. But along with Mercedes, I don't think Red Bull really have a prayer of being on the top, in the top 3 on the grid. If Max does somehow put it in the top 3, then that is one of the laps of the day, without doubt, because that Red Bull car is nowhere near Ferrari and McLaren. It really is not. And I would say the Red Bull definitely slower than Ferrari and McLaren. I'd say slower than Mercedes, and honestly, I'd probably say slower than Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, and Williams. I think the only reason Max will end up probably on the 3rd row is purely because he is just that great compared to the others, especially in that midfield pack. If you put Isaac Hadjar, for example, in that Red Bull and removed Verstappen entirely from the grid, I'm not sure the Red Bull would even make the top 10. So, yeah, that is just how bad the Red Bull is this weekend. We knew this track wouldn't be as good for them as Imola. Imola, a lot of high-speed corners. The Red Bull car likes high-speed corners. Here in Monaco, there isn't a lot of those. There are, a few here and there, but most of them, it's, slow speed or medium speed corners. And they just don't have the front end grip that Ferrari seem to have this weekend, and definitely McLaren have all the time, and that's why they are off the pace. But next Grand Prix in Spain, regardless of what happens this weekend, next weekend in Spain, definitely Red Bull will be right back on the pace. I have no doubt about that. But yeah, this weekend, Max is reduced to fighting for probably the third row of the grid, which is, yeah, pretty much, I think, about where he was last year in qualifying. And then the rest of the top 10, Tsunoda only just behind by a few thousandths of a second his teammate. Impressive, but we'll see if he can keep that up in qualifying. If he can, then Tsunoda should be probably, 7th, 8th, 9th, something like that. So we'll see if Tsunoda can make the top 10. Tsunoda did make the top 10 for Racing Bulls last year, so he can do it. But I think it is dependent on, him, obviously, one, not making a mistake like he did in qualifying last week at Imola, but also that Red Bull, can it be quick enough to allow Tsunoda to make it through? Not quite sure it will be. George Russell 12th. Russell can definitely go quicker than that. And Russell, I'm pretty confident, will be ahead of Antonelli in qualifying. Russell has been pretty good around here in the last few years. So, yeah, Russell, I think, will be the main man for Mercedes. And I think Russell will be in the top 5 on the grid. I am pretty confident of that. But, again, he is going to have to do something incredible to be in the top 3. It would have to be a special lap, just like it would have to be for Max Verstappen. Carlos Sainz 13th. Again, that's not the potential I think Carlos has in that car. Hopefully avoids a possible penalty for whatever alleged infringement under the red flag. We'll see what happens. But yeah, Sainz, I think, will be in the top 10 in qualifying. Bortoleto 14th. Very impressive. Only just ahead of his teammate by, 300ths of a second. If Bortoleto can out-qualify Hulkenberg here in Monaco, that is a very impressive performance. I know he out-qualified Hulk last week at Imola, and it went very wrong in terms of, Hulkenberg finished 11th. Bortoleto was like 17th or something. But here in Monaco, that is a lot less likely to happen. So, yeah, be very interested to see if Bortoleto can keep up that pace. Behrman 15th. To be honest, Behrman being 15th is quite impressive because that Haas car is dreadful this weekend. Both Haases really should be getting knocked out in Q1, but yeah, if Behrman can drag it into the top 15, we'll see, but it would be, I think, a very good lap to do so. Because we know, Esteban Ocon has consistently been quite good here in the past, and he can't even get it above 19th place, so yeah. Haas in trouble. And then Hulkenberg, Pierre Gasly 17th. Nothing wrong with Gasly. That car is just dreadful. And I think we have to say at this point that around street circuits, the Alpine clearly is not a good car. I don't think it's been really good at any of the street circuits we've been to this season. So, yeah, I think that's the only explanation, is that street circuits, the car is just dreadful. Stroll 18th, got to do a lot better than that. Alonso was 0.6 of a second quicker in practice. That is, nowhere near good enough. Stroll really should be hovering around 10th place if Alonso is going to be, where he is. And then, Ocon 19th and Franco Colapinto. I have no idea what he's playing at, but he cannot be a second slower than Gasly in qualifying today, even though he's going to get a penalty for overtaking under red flag, so it doesn't matter what he does today, because he will start probably last. He cannot afford to be that far off Gasly. I don't care how tricky he's finding the car. I don't care. He cannot afford to be that far off the pace, because if he is, may as well just throw Jack Doohan back in the car. Doohan would not do any worse than that. So, yeah, that is embarrassing, quite frankly, from Colapinto. By the way, before we get into the sector time data, make sure to smash the like button. We're on 17 likes. Let's try and get up to, say, 30 or 40 likes if we can in the next half an hour or so. That'd be great if we could do that. Anyway, to understand why the pecking order is the way it is this weekend, let's go through the sector time data. As Sector 1, I wouldn't say it's a surprise that Ferrari are at their strongest in the first sector, because it's a pretty simple first sector, and it does suit that car a bit more than the other parts of the track. But for them to be this quick compared to the rest, a tenth and a half quicker than the next car being the McLaren, is quite incredible. I do think McLaren have more pace to show, though, in this part of the lap. But, yeah, that is an incredible pace in just the first sector. Aston Martin, very good in the first sector, which is good to see. Racing Bulls as well. Mercedes, not great, but I think they will improve in the first sector. I think they'll be probably on the pace of or just behind McLaren, probably in the first sector in qualifying today, but they won't be as good as Ferrari and McLaren. Sauber then just behind, good pace from them, and then Red Bull, I think same for them. I think they will improve, but I think they're more so mixing it with the midfield than Mercedes are. I think Mercedes are just ahead of the midfield. Red Bull, I think, are pretty much in the midfield. So, yeah, it's going to be a struggle for Red Bull, even though, yeah, they will show more pace today than they showed yesterday. And then Williams, not actually that great in the first sector. And then Alpine and Haas, the two slowest teams, which is, of course, not a surprise. The middle sector, which is full of a lot of slow speed corners. Obviously, you've got a chicane, a hairpin. Obviously, you've got the tunnel as well. But a lot of slow speed corners in the middle sector. And no surprise, the McLaren, the quickest car. The McLaren is incredibly good in the slow speed corners compared to the rest of the field. Ferrari, though, only losing 0.07 of a second, which is very impressive. We've seen in slow speed corners this season, Ferrari have been quite poor. So for them to be a lot closer in this aspect is very encouraging. I just hope that they can keep this up going forward into the next Grand Prix in Spain and just going forward in general. And I hope this isn't just limited to this particular Grand Prix. Racing Bulls, very surprising how good they were in the middle sector. Third best team. Again, they are very similar to Red Bull in that, in high speed corners, very good. Slow speed corners, they're not as good, but they're still decent. But for them to be this good in the middle sector is quite incredible. Nearly a tenth quicker than Aston Martin and over a tenth quicker than Mercedes and Red Bull, who will improve, of course, in the middle sector and will be probably just ahead of the midfield runners by the time we get done with qualifying. And yeah, in the middle sector, I think they'll be, say, more like third and fourth or fourth and fifth in this part of the lap rather than fifth and sixth. Williams still not that great in the middle sector, which is a tad surprising. I think they could find maybe another tenth of a second or so in this part of the lap. Sauber not too bad, and then Haas and Alpine, what's going to the two slowest teams. And then the final sector, Lewis Hamilton, only by 0.1 of a second quicker than the McLaren, so pretty much level on pace, the two teams. No idea why, but Haas, the third best team in the final sector in practice 2 yesterday. Again, I don't understand that. Behrman on an absolutely mental one through that final part of the lap. The Williams a lot better, which is good to see. The Racing Bulls still decent. Alonso still decent. But then Mercedes and Red Bull really quite far behind. And you've got to say, looking at the sector time data, that's really why Mercedes and Red Bull are slower than Ferrari and McLaren, is because in the slow speed corners, they're just giving away too much time, say 3 to 4 tenths of a second overall for the entire lap. And the reason that is surprising to me is because, with Mercedes, they were pretty good in slow speed corners up until this weekend compared to, say, Ferrari. But suddenly, it's switched around. So, yeah, just not good enough, I'm afraid, from them. And that's why those teams are on the back foot compared to Ferrari and McLaren, and then Sauber and Alpine at the bottom. But before I get onto my predictions, let's just go through what the pecking order should be in qualifying today. I still think if everyone does their absolute best laps, I still think the McLaren is the best car by say a tenth or so. Again, it is close. Ferrari absolutely can fight and get pole position today. But I think if Piastri can deliver his best lap in Q3, I think Piastri takes pole position because I think the McLaren is quicker. Ferrari, I would say definitely second. Third, I would say Mercedes. And then, I mean, in terms of the results, the fourth best team will be Red Bull, but that will be more so because of Max Verstappen more than it will be because of the car itself. Fourth quickest, I'd probably say, would be probably Williams. And then fifth, probably after that, Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, then sixth. And then Red Bull, genuinely, I think have got probably about the seventh best car. Again, it is very close between those teams of Williams, Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, and Red Bull. But that's genuinely where I think Red Bull are. And I think Max will get the most out of it today. And he will make it look a lot better than it is, the really it is. And to clarify what I mean by that is that what I'm trying to say is that if Max was in the Racing Bulls or the Aston Martin or even the Williams, I think Max would have a better chance of qualifying higher today than he does in that Red Bull. So that's why I think Red Bull are as low down in the pecking order as I think they are. Because if he was in a Williams, I think Max probably could qualify on the second row of the grid, maybe even snatch third place. But because he's in the Red Bull, which is not performing well at all, I think a third row is the absolute best he can do today. If I'm proven wrong, then I'm proven wrong. But I don't believe that Red Bull car is good at all. And we'll see in qualifying whether I'm proved correct. And then the three slowest teams would have to be Sauber 8th, Haas 9th, and Alpine the slowest of the field. But given that's what I think the pecking order is, let me get on to my prediction for qualifying. And by a tenth of a second, Oscar Piastri will take pole position for McLaren, in my opinion. Charles Leclerc will finish in second. Lewis Hamilton third. Still would be a decent result for Ferrari, second and third. But, I mean, with pole position on offer, really, they need to get it if they want to get a race win this year, because this is easily their best chance so far this year of winning a race. George Russell, I think, will just about sneak onto the second row of the grid ahead of Lando Norris, who I don't believe will deliver in qualifying today, and that's why I think Russell will end up fourth. And then Norris fifth. Verstappen will just about get sixth ahead of Antonelli seventh, Sainz in eighth, Hadjar ninth, and Fernando Alonso, I think, will round out the top 10. But just outside of the top 10, it will be very close between Lawson, Albon, Tsunoda, maybe Stroll if he steps it up, but Stroll's always been awful in Monaco. So, yeah. It'll be very, I think, from Sainz in 8th down to, say, whoever's in, say, 13th or even 14th, it is going to be incredibly close. We're talking a tenth and a half in Q2. So, yeah, it is going to be very, very close. But that is the top 10 I'm going for. Let me know in the chat or in the poll running in the chat whether you agree or disagree, as we have got just under 1 hour to go, guys, until qualifying is underway. Let me just get the timer back on screen, and I'll just wait for the next minute to tick over, as we are, or not we, but I am just currently watching the end of the F2 sprint race. There you go, 55 minutes. That's all you have to wait until qualifying is underway. Yeah, so what do you call it? So I'm going to quickly well, not quickly, but say for the next half an hour or so, read out your comments in the chat, so keep them coming. Make sure to keep your thoughts ahead of qualifying. Make sure to keep typing them out, I guess I'm trying to say, in the chat, and I will read out the best comments I can in the next, say, half an hour or so. And then in about half an hour, I will obviously post a link of the stream out again, and I will also do a quick round of other teams and just quickly go through what the teams should be realistically aiming for in this session. But good to see so many of you here already. So let's just get into it and go through your comments. Paul James Squibbs, I don't think you've been here for a while. Good to see you. Says, come on, Leclerc. Astro, good to see you. Obviously, you're here expectant of a Piastri pole, which is, I wouldn't say likely, but it's definitely possible. And Astro says, Piastri pole, I reckon, then Leclerc second, Max third, Lando fourth, and Russell fifth. And Astro also saying, prefer Piastri to win, but would be great to see Ferrari do well this weekend, and could happen here. Absolutely. Cannon Creature says, Norris is a hype boy. Piastri surely should be number one driver. If Lando fails to deliver today and ends up in qualifying where I've just predicted where I think he'll be, and Oscar does take pole, then Oscar, is going to win the race. Lando will probably at best finish in probably fifth, maybe fourth, if strategically they can find a way past whoever's in fourth. But yeah, if Oscar wins this weekend and Lando's not on the podium, then I think at that point, if you're McLaren, you've got to be looking at Oscar as the number one for the Drivers' Championship, because Lando just consistently is not delivering the potential in that car, when Oscar most of the time is. If you look at the last Grand Prix Imola, even though Piastri didn't win, got pole with a great lap. And yeah, the race wasn't his finest hour in terms of, gifting the lead to Verstappen by being too cautious. But I think he still did well enough, did Oscar. And, given the success he's had lately, it was, inevitable that very soon he would have a downer of a race. And it wasn't too bad. He, still finished in third place, but yeah, he is, by the looks of it, I wouldn't say totally on it this weekend. He did have an accident at turn one yesterday at Saint Devote. He went straight on into the barriers. Thankfully, only broke his front wing. But if he can win this weekend and Lando and Max are not on the podium, then that is a big win and a big step towards possibly winning the World Championship this year. Because if Lando, let's say Lando finishes fifth and Max finishes sixth, where I've predicted them to qualify, Lando would be, 28 points behind in second, and Max would be, I think, almost 40 points behind in third. That's a pretty healthy gap to have at this point of the season. So Oscar's just got to deliver his end of the bargain and hope that Lando and Max have a struggle, which it is possible. But in terms of the championship, again, this is a very important race. Again, for Piastri, really, Oscar needs to win this race. Can't afford to lose out to Ferrari. I mean, if Leclerc ends up just delivering too good of a lap in qualifying, fair play. But Oscar absolutely has to win this Grand Prix. As for the other two, Lando, I think as long as Lando finishes on the podium, I think that's good enough. I don't think he necessarily has to win this weekend. I think, it is, we have to consider this. It is very hard to get pole and then win in Monaco. I think, it's probably more likely Lando could win next weekend at the Circuit de Catalunya in Spain. So I think as long as, from Lando's point of view, as long as he wins one of the next two races and then in the other one finishes on the podium, then I think that'll get his season going again. For Max, I think, as I said, next weekend they'll be a lot more competitive because that track will suit them more. I think for Max, as long as he can secure a podium at worst this weekend, that would be good enough, given that McLaren do have a clear advantage over them this weekend. And then if Max wins next weekend in Spain, then championship-wise, he is, in a very good position. So, yeah. This is an important Grand Prix, but in terms of who needs what, again, Oscar needs to win, Max needs a podium, Lando, I think, also needs at least a podium as well. So that's that's what I think those drivers, championship-wise, need. If you do consider George Russell still part of the championship fight, then I think Russell needs as well at least a podium to keep himself in the fight to a degree. But we'll see what those drivers can do. Let's have a look at some other comments here. So there looks to be some political conversation. Let's keep that out of the chat if we can. McLaren's generally done pretty good by Piastri. The odd strategy stuff up expected, says Astro. Yeah, I don't think they've messed around Oscar too much. I mean, yeah, in Melbourne, obviously they gave him that team order to stay behind. Even if they had allowed him to race Lando, there's no guarantee Oscar would have won that race. And then, yeah, at Imola, definitely the team cost him second place, but I don't think you could necessarily say they cost him the win, because I don't think we know absolutely that Oscar could have come back and beat Verstappen in that race. Bravo Mods, good to see you. Says, I think McLaren is slowly going from Lando's to Oscar's team. I agree. Jacques Cohen says Ferrari needs a win and they are desperate. They are. One thing I have to make clear, though, is if Ferrari, especially with Leclerc, if they do win this Grand Prix, do not be starting up conversations about the championship, because the championship is long gone. Ferrari are, like 100 and... I think Ferrari are nearly 200 points behind in the Constructors' Championship. And on the driver's side, Leclerc is... is it 80 something points behind Piastri? I think it is. Yeah, it's something like that. I think 85 points possibly. Even if Leclerc wins this Grand Prix, I don't see Ferrari suddenly turning around their season to the point where they're winning the championship. They would need to not only win this Grand Prix, they'd have to go on a proper top run of form in these next few races and properly take points away from Piastri, I think, to be in championship contention. So yeah, even if Leclerc wins this Grand Prix, which if he does, that would be awesome. But if he does, do not think that suddenly he is going to be fighting for the championship, because again, it would need quite the turnaround from the Ferrari team consistently with their results to be in that position. Anyway, let's have a look at some more comments here. Willifon says McLaren still easily have the best car. They need better drivers. I won't say easily at the moment they have the best car, but I think, yeah, they've got the best car. I don't think that's still really up for debate. One thing I will say regarding the last Grand Prix Imola is, I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, Red Bull had the best car at Imola." The reason I completely disagree with that is because, one, if Red Bull had the best car, why did Oscar Piastri get pole? I'm not saying Piastri is terrible compared to Verstappen, but Max delivered the absolute best lap he could in Q3, and it still wasn't enough. So I think that's clear evidence McLaren had the better car. But also, if you look at the race pace, Red Bull and McLaren basically were on the same pace in the race at Imola. We know, as great as Oscar can be and as great as Lando can be, they are not on the same pace as Max Verstappen. I reckon Max, in a race situation, is probably, at least a couple tenths of a second a lap better if they were in the exact same cars. So, yeah, I think McLaren, not by miles, I'm not saying McLaren were, absolutely miles ahead of everybody else, but I do think McLaren had the quickest car at Imola. But the reason they didn't win was because Max Verstappen is the best driver in the world and clearly proved that in the race last week, that he was the one who made the difference last weekend. But I'm not going to deny that Red Bull had a good car. I'm not going to say Red Bull's car was absolutely diabolical. I'm not going to pretend that. They had definitely, at worst, the second best car. But it was not as good as the McLaren last weekend. It was not. And again, in my view, it was Max who made the difference, as he so usually does. But in regards to this weekend, I think it is similar where I think McLaren, I do think have the fastest car, but I don't think it's by a lot. I think maybe a tenth, maybe 2/10 at the absolute most if one of their drivers is, perfect with their lap in qualifying. But it's not, it's not very far, the gap at all. Brabham saying Ferrari suspension isn't as stiff so they can ride corners better here. Another reason, apparently, why Ferrari have been so quick this weekend is that they've not had any issues in regards to the ride height, which I know has been an issue for them this season. Obviously, they got disqualified for that in, what do you call it, at the Chinese Grand Prix. And also, as a reason, I think the first Grand Prix in Melbourne, why they were so slow, because they had to raise the ride height quite a bit. Yeah, apparently, I don't know this for sure, but from the reports I've seen, it's not been a real concern for them this weekend. So possibly why Ferrari are a lot better. Doohan might do better than Colapinto. I mean, if Colapinto keeps up this level of performance, then Doohan surely will be back in the car because, yeah, a second slower than your teammate in practice too is diabolical. Will F1 says Ferrari won't keep it up because it's Ferrari. Quite possibly. And hold on. Just scrolled a bit too far. Hello, by the way, to Rook. Hopefully you're having a good bank holiday weekend. And hello to others who have joined us. Crystal Racing, I can see. Was it Shanonso? I think it is. Says George had a Max. Now the Mercedes looks horrible. I know the Red Bull's not looking good, but the Mercedes looks worse. if that's what you think, fair enough. But yeah, I personally think the Mercedes is better than the Red Bull this weekend by probably, probably I'd say what, a couple tenths or tenth or two, something like that. But yeah, ultimately we will see. Lychee says both Williams will be in the top 10. Be good to see them keep that up, because obviously they did that last week at Imola, 6th and 7th. That in what do you call it? Miami. I think they were also, was it 6th and 7th or something like that, 6th or 8th. I think it was at the Miami Grand Prix. And then I think in the Saudi Arabian race, I think they got both cars in the top 10. So be good to see them keep that up, as they are easily the strongest midfield team this season. David asking, will both McLarens crash into each other at some point this season? I don't think so. I think Piastri, racecraft wise, is very neat and tidy. I don't think he's a reckless driver really at all. He's incredibly good when it comes to that. Lando, yeah, we know he's not the best, but I think with Lando, I don't think his issue is crashing. I think it's just the ability to pull off certain overtakes, but also I think his strategy of how he tries to get past someone, especially someone like Max Verstappen. I think that's his issue. I don't think it's an issue with crashing, like say George Russell had back in, was it 2022, where Russell had quite a few accidents. It's again, it's not to do with that, but yeah, I don't think that McLaren drivers will have an accident. I think they'll be fine. Um, Bravum says, to be fair, Piastri's gone wheel to wheel Max 3 times lately and has come out better twice. No one beats Max every time wheel to wheel. True. I mean, Piastri, he said he was too cautious at the first couple corners, and admitted post race that yeah, fair play, Max did an amazing move and deserved to go on to go on to win. So yeah, he will learn from that. I think the issue was he didn't claim the corner with authority. I think he was kind of just hoping that he had done enough, and then suddenly round the outside comes Verstappen in his Red Bull, squeezes Oscar out the way, and marches on to victory. So I think, I mean, this weekend, if Oscar gets pole, he won't need to worry about anyone going around the outside of him, because these cars are way too big. You can't do that at turn one without hitting the wall or hitting another car. But obviously next week at the Spanish Grand Prix, it is, I think, isn't it one of the longest runs down to turn one? So if Piastri is in the lead on the entry to turn one, I think he'll be a lot more authoritative, let's say, with his positioning and driving to make sure he secures the first couple corners and leads the race away. Ross Palmer says, whoever saved their medium tyres for the race and qualifying will see more success than ones that did not. The C6 tyre reminds me of the useless purple striped tyres from a few seasons ago. Yeah. Or I think you might be thinking of the pink ones, which was it the Hypersoft we had in Monaco and Mexico. I remember we had it. I mean, in terms of pure pace, yeah, anyone that saves a set of mediums for the race is going to be in good nick, but you're still not going to be able to overtake tomorrow. And I don't expect really any overtaking at all tomorrow, even if there's massive tyre deltas. I just don't see it whatsoever. So, yeah. We'll see how it goes, but I don't have good hopes for the race tomorrow. Crystal Racing says only Lando fans believe he's in a title fight. I see what you mean, but we have to say he's in a title fight. I mean, he's only 13 points behind his teammate, and he's in the best car on the grid. And we know as well what he's capable of. What he... And that's the thing I need to be, clear on with Lando, is he has not been good this season, but let's not pretend like this season is the best of what Lando has to offer. We've seen him perform better than this. Last year at times, 2021 obviously was a great example of that. I know he didn't have championship pressure on his shoulders, but in terms of pure performance, he was a lot better that year than he is now. So we know he can do better, but he isn't doing, his best. Which is ultimately why I don't think at all he will win the championship, because I just don't think he has enough of what it takes. But if he can show his best form a lot more, then there's no reason why he can't start winning races. We know in qualifying that when he hooks it up, he has a ton of pace. He is an incredibly quick driver in qualifying when he wants to be. We saw that last year. So, yeah. It is down to him, really. But yeah, I mean, I don't think he will win the championship. I think probably the only fans or the only people that believe he will win the championship is probably his fans. But yeah, he's only 13 points behind, and he's in the best car, so we have to say he's in the championship fight. Brabham says when Leclerc had the best car, he bottled it. Not quite sure what you're talking about there. If you're talking about the championship a few years ago, then I completely disagree. Astro says, I reckon Oscar is on or near Max's level. I don't think he is. I wouldn't say Max is completely in all areas on a different level. I think when it comes to qualifying, I think the only drivers consistently that can match his level is George Russell and Charles Leclerc. In a race situation, though, I don't think anyone can match what he does in terms of pace, skill, racecraft. I don't think in a race situation, I don't think there's anyone on his level. I think he's incredibly similar to Michael Schumacher, and Michael was just like that. Where in qualifying, Michael wasn't always the absolute best. There were times where Michael was not quite on the pace, but in a race situation, Michael was always there and doing incredible things. And I don't think there's anyone on the grid who today, compared to Max Verstappen, can say they are on the same level in a race situation as Max Verstappen. So, yeah, that's why ultimately Max is the best. He might not always be the quickest. He is incredibly quick, but he's not always like that, which is why I say I think Leclerc and Russell are on his level when it comes to pure pace over a qualifying lap. But in a race situation, I think Max is clear above the rest. Before I read any more comments out, by the way, let me just quickly post a link of the stream out one final time. So let me just quickly do this, guys, and then I'll be back with you. As we've only got half an hour to go until qualifying. This build-up has zoomed by, which is good, because I cannot wait to get into this session. Come join us here to watch along. What should be a thrilling qualifying in Monaco. And there you go. See if we get any more people joining. So yeah, I'll probably read some more comments for the next, say, 10 minutes. And then I'll quickly do a roundup of the teams and what they should be aiming for. And then obviously a reminder of my predictions. And then, yeah, we'll be very close then to being into the session. Human Intelligence says Russell is not faster than Piastri this year. I would disagree with that. I think there's been enough examples where Russell, if they were in the same car, I think Russell would have been ahead. And I think, Russell has done more impressive things in qualifying this year compared to Piastri. That's not to say Russell overall has been better than Piastri. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying in regards to qualifying, if you look at, say, the Chinese Grand Prix, the Bahrain Grand Prix, Saudi Arabia, Imola, if you look at those qualifying sessions, I think Russell has been at the same level, if not better than Oscar. I think definitely the session in Shanghai, Russell was definitely better with his performance than the two McLaren drivers. And you could probably say that for maybe a couple other sessions as well, but that's my view. I think Russell, I still think, even though these last couple races have not been as high level from him as the early part of the season, I still think George Russell's having a great season. The car just is not good enough for him to be, fighting for, fighting for race wins and pole positions enough, sadly. If it was, I think Russell would already have at least a couple wins to his name and would be, without doubt, a title contender. Right, let's read some more comments. Brevham says Norris had the quali on science in his first year. Yeah, which, again, proves that the Lando we have seen this season is not the best version of Lando Norris. I think most people would agree on that. But ultimately, when the pressure is on, this is the criticism with Lando, is that he does not rise to the pressure and give us his best performance. See if I can find some more comments here. Brabham says in the chat, third year Piastri versus third year Verstappen would be interesting. Max would have the pace, but he would be accident prone. I think Oscar edges him because of it. Maybe, but I still would back Verstappen purely because I think Max would just have too much pace. I know, yeah, Max had the, some accidents, but yeah, I think most of the time, I think Max would just be too quick for Oscar. If Piastri could improve like Max has since Max's third year. Max's third year, by the way, was 2017, where I thought Max had a good year that year, considering how bad the Red Bull car was for a lot of that season. Yeah, if Oscar can make the improvements that Max has made since then Oscar absolutely can get to the point where maybe he's not the best on the grid, but he's the next best after Verstappen. But I wouldn't say Oscar is currently in that position. If I was to, in terms of the top 5 drivers on the grid right now, and this is based on really the last, say, couple years, Max, number 1. Second, I would probably go. I'll stick with Leclerc, but it's very close between Leclerc and Russell for me. Leclerc second, Russell third, fourth. Yeah, probably you'd have to say Piastri. It would be close between Piastri, Norris, and Alonso for me. And the reason it would be close is because obviously Oscar has not consistently outperformed Lando really until this season. Fernando obviously has been hampered by having a bad car for a decent amount of time. But I still think Fernando is one of the top, say, 6, 7 on the grid, at least. So yeah, I think Oscar is definitely top 5 on the grid right now, but I don't think he has done enough yet, in my view, to be top 3. I still think, even though he is a lot quicker now in qualifying, I still think he could be a bit more consistent with it. But, if you look at how he's like in a race situation, in terms of racecraft, pace, he's, really, really good. I would say you could argue compared to, say, someone like George Russell that he's better in a race situation. Compared to Leclerc, it's very close. I'd probably just favour Leclerc in that aspect at the minute. But yeah, I think when you look at the overall game, I'd say probably 4th or 5th best driver on the grid. I would say at the moment. But again, I've made this point before. I'll make it again. You do not have to be the best driver on the grid to win a championship. You just need to be great enough in a good enough car. There has been plenty of examples of that. I mean, Damon Hill, 1996, was not the best driver on the grid. Michael Schumacher by far was the best driver on the grid, but Michael was in a shitbox for most of the season. And Damon was in the best car on the grid by miles, and all he had to do was beat Jacques Villeneuve enough, who was a rookie that year, and he did, and he won the championship. That's that at the end of the day, that's that's just how it goes in Formula One, because all the the performance differences you get. Again, it's not down to, and I wish it was down to purely who is the best, like it was, say, in tennis, but in Formula One, that's the way it is. Anyway, I'll read out one more comment quicker, then we'll just quickly do a roundup of the teams. Let's see if I can find. Human Intelligence says Hadjar is really good. Definitely can get better, but he'll improve. Yeah, Hadjar, I've been very surprised by. I did not think this guy would really do anything of note in Formula One. Personally, I thought he was going to be another Zhou Guan Yu, but he has already been better than Zhou was in his entire time in Formula One, as far as I'm concerned. Hadjar has been brilliant, and I hope if the car remains quick, I hope that he, say, can finish in the top 10 of the championship, which I think is definitely possible. Given that you've got Ocon and Stroll in the top 10 of the championship at the minute, so yeah, definitely a possibility. I think Hadjar's only 7 points away from the top 10 of the championship, so yeah, I really hope he can get in there, because I think he is a very good driver, very quick. Like you said, can get better. I think can maybe get a bit more consistent in certain areas, but yeah, I think he's he's the base of this year will set him up well for the future. No doubt about that. Anyway, just quickly hide the timer because let's do a quick roundup of the teams of how they need to do in qualifying today. McLaren absolutely have to get pole position. They've got the pace. It's all down really to the drivers. Can they deliver under the massive amount of pressure that there will be, of course, not just with the championship on the line, but also delivering pole at Monaco when you actually have the chance to. It is, one of the biggest, if not, well, it is the biggest pole position of the year in terms of status. So, yeah, it all comes down to the two drivers. Now, Piastri and Norris have not always been the best at delivering their finest laps in in Q3. We saw that at Suzuka earlier this year. Miami was another example of that, where the best laps were not delivered when it mattered most. If they can do that today, if they can deliver their best laps today, then I really don't see anyone stopping them. So it all comes down again to those two drivers. If they deliver, the McLaren are in a great position. And I think as a team, I think the aim, I don't think the front row, I think locking out the front row is probably a bit too much for them to be able to do, because just given how quick Ferrari are. First and third, though, definitely is a possibility. For Red Bull, given how much they're struggling, I think with Max Verstappen, as long as they can get him onto the third row of the grid, at minimum, then I think that is, at least something. But if Max does not deliver in qualifying here, which I don't think that will happen because of how regularly great he is in that car. But if that does happen, there is a chance Max could miss out on Q3, because this car genuinely is not quick. It is nowhere near the level of McLaren and Ferrari this weekend. So yeah, Max, if you can get on the third row, that would be at least something. And then maybe they could get a couple extra points tomorrow. For Yuki Tsunoda, even though the Red Bull car is struggling, if he can somehow drag that car into the top 10, then I think that would be a really top effort. Because with how quick and close Racing Bulls are, Williams are, Aston Martin are, it's not going to be easy whatsoever with so many great drivers in there, fighting hard for the top 10. So, yeah, Tsunoda, I think likely to be knocked out in Q2, probably in 12th or 13th place. But if he can get in the top 10, that would be a super result. For the Scuderia, they, of course, have not tasted pole position yet this season. They've had a dreadful season. Only one podium so far this year, excluding the sprint races, of course. Pole position, though, is on offer today. And even if both McLaren drivers don't deliver their best laps, even a front row lockout is possible. As long as, though, they get pole, that's all that matters. Wherever the second car is wherever. If it's, second, third, great. But even if they're, outside of the top 10, yeah, obviously not great. But they just have to make sure, no matter what, they are on pole. Because if they don't win this weekend, and, their form, or not their form, but their performance doesn't noticeably turn around, it's going to be hard for them to win a race this season, given how good McLaren are, obviously how great Max Verstappen is in that Red Bull car, which is, good around, let's say, most circuits. So, yeah, this is a big opportunity to get a win on the board. And if they can massively turn around the performance of the car coming out of this Grand Prix, then maybe going forward into the future, of the rest of this season, they can get some more wins. But pole position, absolutely they must get. If they get pole, they're going to win the race. I don't see them throwing it away tomorrow. I think whoever gets pole wins this race. So they absolutely must get it, because if they don't, then it might be quite the wait until the next, say, chance to win a Grand Prix. Mercedes, their car is not great, but it's definitely not bad. I think it's the third best car in the field this weekend. Again, as I said earlier, if they were to get in the top 3 on the grid, that would be absolutely fantastic, but I don't think it's possible. 4th and 5th, I think, is probably the best result they could get. That depends, though, on Antonelli and how great he could be in Q3. But yeah, I think 3rd is just a bit too far away. Probably about a couple tenths of a second too far away from... well, not a couple tenths, probably a tenth and a half away for Mercedes, even if George Russell does a great lap. So yeah, Mercedes, they'll be in the fight. They're not going to be awful. They'll be in the fight. They'll get a decent position. They just won't be really, I think, where they were hoping to be this weekend, which was at worst in 3rd place with one of their cars. For Aston Martin, all their hopes pinned on Fernando Alonso, who is so regularly great here. As I said earlier, Fernando, I think, has the potential to be at the front of the midfield pack. It all depends, though, on whether he can nail a absolutely super lap. We know Fernando isn't always the best over a qualifying lap compared to others, but compared to some of the drivers he's fighting with, Hadjar and Albon and Sainz, a bit of an easier competition than maybe it was a couple of years ago when he tried to get pole in the Aston Martin, fighting Verstappen and Leclerc and Russell and Hamilton, drivers like that. So, yeah, Alonso, I think, has the potential to end up on the 4th row of the grid. Whether he does, though, it depends again on can he deliver a super qualifying lap. If he can, then I think he gets on the 4th row of the grid. The Aston Martin definitely has the potential to do that. Lance Stroll probably will be miles off the pace and probably get knocked down Q1. Not Haas. We'll go on to Alpine. They're going to be absolutely terrible. They have no pace. Same for Haas. Shame about the penalty for Behrman, but yeah, Haas also no pace. Racing Bulls looking good. Looking good with both cars, actually, for once. I still am backing Isaac Hadjar to make the top 10 because he has been consistently better than Lawson this season. Lawson has been decent in some practice sessions this season, but has ultimately never delivered, basically, for the team. Hadjar has on a lot more occasions. So, Hadjar, I think, definitely makes the top 10. Whether Lawson does, we'll have to see. I hope he can, because really, there is no excuse for Lawson to be regularly miles off the pace of Hadjar. Hadjar's been very good this season, but Lawson, he knows he should be right there with Hadjar, if not ahead, given the potential he has. So, yeah, he has to deliver in this session, especially for his future career. Williams, I think they could get both cars in the top 10. I just think because of how close it is, I don't think they will be able to. Carlos Sainz, I think, will make the top 10. Alex Albon, even though he made the top 10 last year here in qualifying, I think will just about miss out in the Williams. But it will be very close. I think Albon will be at worst in 11th place. If anyone from the top 10 I predicted doesn't, make it, Albon, I think, will be the beneficiary in that aspect. So, yeah, Williams, not quite as quick as I expected them to be this weekend, but still very quick and still should be very strong in that midfield fight. And then finally, Sauber. Watch out for the fight between Bortoleto and Hulkenberg. Would be great to see if Bortoleto could out-qualify Hulkenberg yet again. But Sauber, I don't think have the pace to make the top 10. Probably get a car into Q2. I think that's definitely doable, but Q3, just too far for them. And quick reminder, here is my personal qualifying prediction. Here's my top 10 with the predicted gaps as well. Piastri, I think, takes pole by a tenth of a second from Leclerc 2nd, Hamilton 3rd, Russell 4th, Norris 5th, Verstappen 6th, Antonelli 7th, Sainz 8th, Hadjar 9th, and Fernando Alonso, I think, will round out the top 10. As we have 10 minutes to go until qualifying is underway. And by the way, no threat of rain, or no, there is a threat of rain. There is rain in the area, but I don't think it's going to be hitting the track. It has been a beautiful day in Monaco, and I think it will. What do you call it? I think it will remain that way. By the way, regarding Colapinto and Sainz being under investigation for red flag infringements, both drivers have not got a penalty, which I'm pleased from Carlos Sainz's point of view that is the case, because he absolutely cannot afford a penalty. Also, Lewis Hamilton, some of you may know, crashed in practice 3. Right at the corner where Alonso crashed in 2010, which back then cost Alonso the chance to be, at least on the front row of the grid that weekend. Ferrari has explained that they have changed the nose, the front wing, and the right front suspension, plus the entire rear end on Lewis's car after his practice 3 crash. And the reason they changed the entire rear end is because it was quicker than just doing the right rear suspension in isolation. So we will see whether Hamilton's car is still consistent, because when you change the car around that much, it can, maybe mess things up. So we will see. Hopefully not, because Hamilton has been pretty quick this weekend. And also, as Rooks just posted in the chat, Lance Stroll will have a one-place penalty for tomorrow's Grand Prix because he not only impeded but caused a collision with Charles Leclerc in practice 1, which was very silly on Stroll's behalf. But yeah, just a few more minutes, guys, until we are underway for qualifying in Monaco. Before we get underway, make sure, if you haven't already, to smash the like button. We're on 60 likes. Let's try and get up to 100 likes if we can in the next 20 minutes. We've got over 400 people watching, so it's definitely doable. So, yeah, make sure to smash the like button. Of course, it helps in the algorithm, hitting the like button for this channel. Also, it shows me that you guys actually do enjoy the content. So, yeah, make sure to smash the like button if you do. And as well, that poll at the top of the chat is still running, where I've asked you guys who will take pole at Monaco, and your options are Leclerc, Verstappen, Piastri, and Norris. Make sure to cast your vote on who takes pole for the Monaco Grand Prix, the most important and prestigious pole position in all of motorsport. As we've got just a few more minutes to go. I think quickly, before we get underway, I think I'm going to just have a quick drink of water. Then I'll read out probably a couple more comments from you guys. And then we'll get into a couple final details ahead of this qualifying session. Brother Moz says, I feel guilty for enjoying Colapinto's underperformance. As long as you don't celebrate him crashing, then I think there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to support a driver. And, you're Australian, so of course your allegiance is, is not surprising towards Jack Doohan. So, yeah. But as long as you don't celebrate people crashing, then there's nothing wrong with that. People who celebrate drivers crashing, I think, are absolutely insufferable and just morally wrong as far as I'm concerned. But, those people can do what they want. Anyway, qualifying set to get underway. And I think we'll just find one final comment. And let me see if I can find one. As Will F1 says, Ferrari front row lockout isn't possible because Hamilton's qualifying speed is gone and he normally struggles at Monaco nowadays. Yeah, I think it's unlikely, but I think, given how Hamilton's looked so far this weekend, I don't see why it can't happen. We'll see, ultimately. Like you said, Lewis Hamilton has struggled quite a bit in the last few years here in Monaco. He did take Mercedes' last pole here in 2019, but 2019 was a long time ago. 6 years ago, actually. But anyway, let me get on to a final couple important details before we get into this all-important session. Oscar Piastri comes into qualifying at Monaco, leading the championship by 13 points. Max Verstappen in third, 22 points off the lead after that win at Imola. George Russell fourth, just below the 100-point mark. Charles Leclerc in fifth. Hamilton sixth. Antonelli seventh. Alex Albon only 8 points behind Antonelli in eighth place. Esteban Ocon still ninth, and Lance Stroll still in the top 10. And then on the Constructors' side, McLaren already miles clear, and they are going to win the Constructors' Championship. I don't think there's any doubt about that anymore. Mercedes in second, only 16 points clear of Red Bull, who are only then a further 17 points clear of Ferrari. So the battle for second, third, and fourth looking good. Williams in fifth on 51 points, 31 points clear of Haas in sixth. Aston Martin seventh, Racing Bulls only 4 points behind in eighth. Alpine in ninth on 7 points, and last is Sauber just a point behind the French team in 10th. But let's get on to the front-running teams. There's some key stats regarding those front-running teams coming into qualifying that you guys need to know. For McLaren, their last pole in Monaco was in 2007 with Fernando Alonso. Not only did they get pole that weekend, it was a front row lockout, and that was actually the weekend where, Spotygate started to come to a head. So that is how long ago it has been since McLaren had pole here, 18 years ago. And since the year 2000, McLaren have taken pole here 3 times. 2001, they were on pole, and also 2005. They were on pole as well. Last year, they were very quick, but ultimately missed out on pole. Second and fourth, ultimately, there's a pretty decent chance they'll end up second and fourth yet again. We'll see how it ends up, though. For Red Bull, they took pole here 2 years ago with Max Verstappen. What a lap that was by Max a couple years ago. They have been pretty successful here in the last 10 years. 4 poles in the last 10 years in Monaco for Red Bull. Last year, though, 6th and 16th in qualifying. Not sure they're going to be that much better today. Ferrari, of course, were on pole here a year ago in 2024 with Charles Leclerc, and have finished first in qualifying here in Monaco in 3 of the last 4 sessions. 2021, Leclerc finished first, obviously didn't start on pole because of an issue. 2022, Ferrari locked out the front row, still didn't win the race. But yeah, in qualifying lately, Ferrari have been incredibly quick here. And last year, first and third they were in qualifying. And for Mercedes, their last pole in Monaco was in 2019 with Lewis Hamilton, and they've only had 2 poles here in the last 10 years. The other one was in 2015. And Mercedes last year, 5th and 7th in qualifying, probably about where they're going to be today. But let's see who will get pole position in Monaco. As Q1 is about to get underway, I'll get the timer on the screen at the 17-minute mark. And as usual, we'll be knocking out the bottom 5 drivers in Q1. And whoever is in the bottom 5 at the end of the session will be out in those positions. I think likely it is going to be the 2 Alpines, the 2 Haases, and probably one of the Saubers, if I was to predict. But there you go, green light on. And the first 2 cars out are the 2 Williamses of Albon and Sainz. Qualifying in Monaco has begun. And then the next couple cars being the Haases. pass their session basically pointless, because even though Oliver Behrman has been very good this weekend compared to Ocon, Behrman has a 10-place grid penalty. So, yeah, Behrman is going to start at best, 19th? Or no, he's going to start 20th, because obviously the others did not get penalties. So, yeah, Behrman, no real point in him doing qualifying, but he's going to go out there anyway and give it a go. And of course, this weekend we have, I think, the C6 compound as the softest compound, which will be, I'm sure, super grippy, but will fall away quite a lot. As there you go, there is the timer. Let me just adjust the text though quickly. And hold on. As yeah, the two Williamses will be the first to set a lap time. There you go. So 16 and a half minutes to go in Q1. And we are looking at Carlos Sainz, who last year finished on the podium for Ferrari. Also finished second here in 2022 and 2021. But even in the 2010s, when he was in a midfield car, always was one of the drivers to look out for. Always shined here in Monaco. 2017, I remember, he finished 6th in the Toro Rosso. I think 2016 as well, he had a decent race. 2019 for McLaren, finished in 6th, as he's backed off Sainz, I think, because of maybe some traffic. So he's always delivered here in Monaco. And if he does today, then yeah, probably a top 8, maybe even a top 7 is possible. As Rook's saying, timing screen shows Alpine are out on the mediums and F1 out on the softs. Well, Alpine have got to try something, don't they? Because they don't have a car on equal tyres that can probably get through. As Alex Albon is a 1:22.0, which of course is miles off the pace. The best time of the weekend so far, as Behrman has just gone quickest quickly. Let me just quickly check what the lap time was in practice 3. And yeah, so Leclerc did a 1 minute 10.9 in what do you call it? In practice 3. In this session, I think probably around a 1 minute 10.9 or a 1 minute 11.0 or even an 11.1 should be the best lap time in this session, as Hulkenberg goes quickest on a 1:13.3, which is yeah, definitely not quick enough. And I think if you want to get through to Q2, I think you're going to have to do a mid 1 minute 11 probably. Like a 1:11.5, I think is, anything like that or better should get you through to Q2, as Leclerc done a purple middle sector, but I'm not sure if this is actually that quick of a lap. As he opens the DRS coming out of the final corner, and yeah, does a 1:13.0, which is, yeah, a couple seconds off the pace that it should be in Q1. So we're nowhere near proper pace yet. Albon is second, and then it's Hulkenberg third, Bortoletto fourth, Carlos Sainz fifth, Lewis Hamilton sixth. Not anymore, because Liam Lawson has gone quickest on a 1:12.9. As Max Verstappen still in the pits. We know Max tends to wait a bit longer before he comes out in Q1, and here he comes. As Antonelli goes second, here's Lando Norris starting his first flying lap. So Lawson quickest. Antonelli is second. Obviously, this is the young Italian's first Monaco Grand Prix in Formula 1. As they've hidden the timing screen once again. And they're just showing us an above view of all the cars, which is, yeah, I'm sure, fancy to them, but we don't want to see that. As Lance Stroll now goes quickest on a 1:12.8, but again, all these lap times pretty slow compared to what it will be at the end of Q1. Obviously, the track will grip up a lot through this session as Behrman improves quite a lot. Pierre Gasly goes third on the medium compound tyre. In Q3, I will be interested to see if maybe a team decides to go for the medium, like we saw at Imola, just so they can have that better tyre life in the final part of the lap. May give them something, as Lando Norris now goes quickest on a 1:12.860. So Norris up to the top, not for long, as Oscar Piastri goes 0.4 of a second quicker into a 1:12.4. So Piastri, the championship leader, at the top. And then here's Stroll third, Behrman in fourth. Alex Albon now goes up to second for Williams. So it's Piastri, Albon, Norris, Stroll, Behrman, and then Gasly sixth on the medium. Not anymore, because Carlos Sainz has gone up to second. So Williams showing some decent speed so far. Here comes Leclerc, purple middle sector. Where does he go? To the top is where he goes, onto a 1:12.0. And now we're only about probably a second away, I think, in lap time away from what will be the best time in this session. Pole position, by the way, in Q3, I think will probably be either a 1 minute 10.0, or I think it's probably going to be a 1 minute 9 point something. If you do a 1 minute 9 lap time in Q3, then you're either going to be on pole or you're going to be very close to it. As Lewis Hamilton goes second, what's Max Verstappen done? He's in the purple middle sector, and he goes quickest. But still, these lap times quite a bit off. So nothing to take from the performance so far, really. As Hamilton up to third, Piastri fourth. Russell has done his first lap finally. He's in fifth place. And then, oh no, he's not in fifth, because Fernando Alonso has gone up to third. Keep your eye on Alonso. He's always been super strong here in Monaco. He's had pole here twice before, and won here, of course, twice. As Behrman goes up to fifth. And here comes Yuki Tsunoda, who goes sixth for Red Bull. As Lando Norris, 0.3 up on Verstappen after the first two sectors. So, when he touches the wall on the exit swimming pool section, I think he'll be fine, but would have lost him probably a 10th. But he should go quickest, Lando. And he does by 0.3 of a second to a 1:11.5, which is, yeah, a lot more like it now. So Norris to the top. Piastri is coming through the final corner now. And Oscar, I'd imagine, will go at least second. And yes, he does. By 0.2 of a second, he goes second behind Norris. So it's Norris, Piastri, Verstappen, Leclerc, Alonso, Hamilton, Antonelli has just gone seventh. And Alex Albon now improves up to P5. Williams doing lots of laps. Then it's Albon, Alonso, Hamilton, Antonelli, Behrman, and Tsunoda. That's your top 10. Carlos Sainz though moves into the top 10 and goes sixth. And then, so it's Tsunoda 11th, and then Bortoleto in 12th as Leclerc goes second. And then Ocon is 13th, Russell 14th, Lawson 15th. And then in the drop zone at the minute, Hadjar, Hulkenberg, Colapinto, Stroll. Well, Stroll was in the drop zone just then, now up to 14th. So in the drop zone now, the two Racing Bulls of Lawson and Hadjar, Hulkenberg 18th, and then the two Alpines. And of course, the two Alpines did their best times in the medium, so that gamble has not worked. As Max has just done another lap, but I don't think he improved, so he'll be back to the pits for a new set of tyres, and he will have to improve just to make sure he does get through. But I think, again, Liam Lawson, the time he's done is a 1:12.6. That lap time really should come down a lot. On these final runs, this is Pierre Gasly being blocked horribly by Lance Stroll. And yeah, Stroll is going to probably get a penalty for that again. As Stroll says on the radio, fuck, I thought Leclerc was Gasly, man. I can't see the difference with the sun. And it is Bortoletto who clips the wall on the exit of turn 1, but he does it in a way where he loses no lap time, which is exactly what you're supposed to do at Monaco. Here is George Russell, who's currently 15th. Can he improve on that? Surely he can. And he does. He goes 3rd. But yeah, Mercedes so far not looking brilliant in this session. As here is Nico Hulkenberg. As Piastri does a 1:11.3. And I think Piastri, with that lap, I think that's good enough now for him to make Q2. Which is really the only reason that the McLarens, the Ferraris are still out there. It's just to get those laps finished so that they make sure of their appearance in Q2. As we're looking at Nico Hulkenberg, there's cars everywhere jumping out of the way for the green mean machine. And Hulkenberg at the moment doing well enough to get possibly into Q2. This lap might put him into the top 10 if he has a good final sector. Hulkenberg never really done that great in Monaco here at the past. But he goes 6th with that lap. That is an amazing final sector. And that is right there what I'm talking about in terms of the track improving and ramping up. Is these lap times, especially from the drivers in the drop zone, are going to come down massively. And even if you're Lewis Hamilton in 7th with the lap time he's done, you are not safe whatsoever. As Isaac Hadjar proves that and goes 7th from being 18th. So almost everyone still needs to improve if they want to make sure they get into Q2. Antonelli gets up to 6th. Not sure if that's a good enough lap time from Antonelli. He'll have to improve again. As Ocon goes 6th ahead of Antonelli, proving my point. So Antonelli has got to improve again, because I think he might be at risk there of getting eliminated in Q1. Here is Leclerc. Can he go to the top? Yes, he does by 1/10.5. So that should be Leclerc through now to Q2. I don't think they'll be at risk, Leclerc and Piastri. Here's Colapinto, who is, well, at least for the moment, he's quicker than Gasly. If he outqualifies Gasly, you can't complain really about that. As Gasly goes up to 12th place, what can his Argentine teammate do? Doesn't improve and stays in 20th. So he's going to have to cool that down and go for another lap. Because, yeah, that is obviously terrible. As Lawson goes 13th, I don't think that'll be good enough for Lawson. As we've got Alonso now in the drop zone at the minute. As here is Yuki Tsunoda, who goes up to 9th. Honestly, I have no idea who is going to get eliminated in Q1. It could be anyone. Really, from Ocon in 6th down, it could be literally anyone who gets eliminated here. As here comes Albon in 12th. Can he improve? Yes, he can, and goes up to 4th, which I think will probably just about get him through. As Sainz in 15th is on a lap. Needs a great final sector, I think, to make sure of his Q2 appearance. And Sainz to the line, goes 5th. So yeah, both Williamses should be through. So the drop zone now, Bortoleto, Alonso, Behrman, Stroll, and Colapinto. Hamilton currently on an outlap. Hamilton down to 13th. And this is what I mean. Hamilton has to get this lap right. If he doesn't, he will probably get eliminated here in Q1. But let's see what the 7 times world champion can do. As Hamilton and Verstappen incident noted for impeding. Not sure what that's about. As also, one driver that really should get themselves out of the drop zone is Fernando Alonso. We know he can be a lot quicker than that. As Hamilton does not improve his first sector. Not a personal best, so not a good start. The first sector, though, is the least important. So if you get the rest of the lap right, it should still be enough for Hamilton to get through. As Lawson on a final lap. We've only got 25 seconds until the checkered flag. As Lawson and Alonso improving. As Hamilton doesn't have the greatest nouvelle chicane, I must say. Behrman goes up to 13th. Not sure that will be enough. Gasly goes 14th. I'm pretty sure that won't be enough from Gasly. Alpine just too slow. Hamilton, though, purple middle sector. Can he keep that up into the final sector as Max Verstappen goes 3rd? Lewis Hamilton goes 4th, and that is good enough. He is into Q2, no doubt about it. Here is Liam Lawson, currently 16th. He has to get himself out, and he does for now. Up to 9th. Here is Alonso, who goes 7th. So he's definitely through. As we're looking now at Bortoleto, as Tsunoda goes 10th. I think that'll be enough for Tsunoda. Yellow flag somewhere out there as Bortoleto goes 15th. Hadjar knocks him straight out, though, and goes up to 11th. As the yellow flag is at the chicane, I believe. And Stroll has backed off, and it's a Mercedes of Antonelli. He's put it in the barrier on the exit of... Is that the chicane? Yes, it is. The exit of the chicane. He's put it in the barrier. The red flag is out. The session's over. Q1 is over anyway. And Antonelli, he does get through in 15th, but of course he's out in 15th. He will not be able to go through and do anything in the rest of this session. Disaster for the Italian. He had to improve on what he did last weekend at Imola, which was poor, really, from him. And he hasn't. He's put it in the barrier. So Antonelli pretty much out with the rest of the drivers in Q1. So Q1 is done with. Let's go through the drivers that are actually, before we do, let's watch this replay of Antonelli. So down to the chicane. And he clipped the inside wall and it punctured his tyre. I think ripped his suspension as well. And then he hit the barrier. So yeah, just turned in just slightly too early. Hadjar did the same yesterday, but I think he did that with a rear tyre, which he got away with because at least he could get that back to the pits. Antonelli was never getting that back to the pits. disaster for Antonelli and another poor qualifying performance from him. Anyway, through to Q2, Leclerc, Piastri, Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris, Albon, Alonso, Sainz, Russell, Tsunoda, Hadjar, Lawson, Ocon, Hulkenberg, and technically Antonelli. Knocked out in Q1 though, Gabriel Bortoleto, Oliver Behrman, Pierre Gasly, Lance Stroll, and Franco Colapinto. And yeah, Antonelli, I think, is, I mean, we have to remember he's 18 years old, but I do think lately he is just cracking a bit under the pressure. Obviously brought all of his school friends to Imola, and obviously having all the attention of, Imola being one of his home races. Toto Wolff actually came out and said after the Grand Prix weekend that he could see that Antonelli mentally was tapped out by Friday with all the attention he was getting. And, given the talent he has, he's going to get a lot of attention. And at the minute, he's not delivering. Is Antonelli? He's not delivering in that car. When I say he's not delivering, I'm talking really about the last couple races. Imola and this weekend. Just is not delivering, I'm afraid. But hopefully, this is just a blip, because I think up until his home race at Imola, I thought he was having a good enough season, given the limitations of the car he was driving. But yeah, last couple races have not been good enough. One thing I will say is congratulations to Esteban Ocon getting into Q2. That's a great effort from him. Behrman, I mean, yeah, probably could have done better, but he's got a 10th-place penalty, so it doesn't really matter what he does. So, yeah, good effort from Ocon. We'll see what he can do in Q2. But Q2, when it gets underway, will be a 15-minute long session, and I'll sync up timer at the 14-minute mark. And there you go. There are the graphics for Q2. By the way, we're on 90 likes. So if you haven't hit the like button yet, make sure to do so. Let's try and get it to 100 likes if we can in the next, say, 10 minutes. That'd be great if we could do that. And by the way, hello to Nib in the chat, who I know is here anticipating the possibility of a Oscar Piastri pole position. Of course, Australian drivers in the last 15 years have had quite a bit of success here in Monaco. Mark Webber took pole here in 2010, started on pole in 2012, and then obviously Ricciardo had pole here a couple times, and obviously Webber a couple wins in Monaco. Ricciardo got his win, thankfully, in 2018. Can Piastri join his fellow Aussies in getting pole and victory in Monaco? So we're looking at a replay of, I think, what the Hamilton and Verstappen incident might be. And yeah, Hamilton was on the inside line going into the Casino Square section. And Max on the radio, fuck, whoa, mate, fuck, Lewis. And yeah, Lewis saying, the radio, you said he was slowing down, mate, fuck. Yeah, I think Lewis might get a penalty for that, looking at that incident. I think that, there's a chance he might not. They could interpret it differently. But I think there's a chance he's going to get a penalty for that. which would be a disaster, especially if he ends up qualifying, in a good position. But yeah, we're just waiting for Q2 to get underway. And hopefully it's not a massive wait. That's the one good thing about Monaco is they do tend to... the marshals are, as I'm sure the commentators on the Sky and whatever have said quite a bit, is that, the marshals in Monaco are the best in the world. They do tend to clear the cars away pretty well in good time as well. So shouldn't be as long of a wait as maybe it would be at other circuits. And I think also Monaco is one of those circuits that do recruit marshals from, other racetracks, Silverstone and places like that. As Karun is on the Sky pad just in and analysing all of the blocking that was in Q1. Obviously, Q1 in Monaco, you're always going to get those incidents because of the amount of cars on track. But thankfully, as the session goes on, that becomes less of an issue. As Q2 will start in 2 minutes' time. So, all good. Don't Rook's saying, don't they go and train marshals at other tracks? Possibly. I don't know. But I do know they recruit marshals from, tracks that are like near or closer to Monaco, obviously Silverstone being one of them. And I'm pretty sure there are other racetracks that recruit marshals from, say, European races purely for like experience and to like train the younger marshals. I know that's happened in some of the Middle Eastern races. So, yeah. But they've done a good job. They've cleared the car. And in less than a minute, we'll be back underway for Q2. Now, here in Q2, the best lap time that we should be seeing is a mid 1 minute 10. I think. Maybe a 1:10.3 if someone really is super quick. But yeah, around, I'd say anywhere between a 1:10.3 and a 1:10.6 is probably what's going to be the quickest time of Q2. In terms of the time you need to do at the slowest to get through to Q3, it's probably going to have to be a 1 minute 10 lap time. If you do a 1 minute 11, you're going to probably be either eliminated in Q2, or if you do make it to Q3, it's going to be, very close. So, yeah. As long as you do a 1 minute 10, then you should be at least close. As Q2 has begun, I'll sync up the timer in about 45 seconds. Freezex asking, please, who crashed? Antonelli. And Antonelli will not be going any further in this session, so Antonelli is out in 15th place. So only 4 drivers here in the rest of the field remaining can be eliminated. You'd think Hulkenberg and Ocon very likely will be eliminated because their cars are just not quick enough. And then after that, it's between the Williamses, Alonso, the Racing Bulls, Sonoda. Yeah, that's who it should be between as to who makes it through to Q3. But there you go. 14 minutes to go until the end of Q2. Let's see if we get any surprises. And yeah, as Rooks is saying in the chat, Ferrari did not tell Lewis that he was on a quick lap. They told him that he was on a slow lap, and then suddenly, oh, he was on a quick lap. So yeah, I think there's a decent chance Hamilton is going to get a penalty for that because he clearly was blocking the racing line. But with Max still comfortably getting through, they may be lenient, but I think they will probably give him a penalty. And it's all Ferrari's fault. The drivers, this is a racetrack where you really need your engineer to be on top of their game because you can't see where drivers are coming from all the time. As there in the garage is Charles's brother Arthur, who is a Ferrari development driver, and on track, an absolute psychopath. Thankfully, is not on the grid, Formula One wise, because if he was, then yeah, it would be quite wild. As Leclerc is out there on mediums. Now, Ferrari do tend to, I would say, sandbag with their first run in Q2. They've always consistently run with scrubbed tyres in the first run, but that normally would be scrubbed soft tyres. So I think Ferrari, they're going to try this, but I think they will have to move on to a soft compound tyre because I don't think this is going to work. I don't think the medium has enough pace, unfortunately. As Nico Hülkenberg goes to the top of the timing sheets and now is replaced by Esteban Ocon. Again, great job by Ocon and Hülkenberg to a degree as well in getting through, even though Hülkenberg I think was helped by Antonelli. His accident. As Liam Lawson goes quickest for Racing Bulls. And Charles Leclerc does a 1:11.3, which on the medium, that's not a bad lap time, but it's definitely not good enough. He will have to do a soft tyre run. If he stays on that tyre, he will not make it through. Lawson second, Alonso third. Lewis Hamilton has gone fifth on the medium. Not anymore, because Lando Norris has a 1:10.9, and I think that is slightly the quickest lap time of the weekend so far. So, Lando Norris, quickest of all. Oscar Piastri, though, is out there on a lap. So is Max Verstappen. As Alex Albon on the medium tyre has gone third. As Max Verstappen, purple final sector, goes second. And then it's Leclerc third, Albon fourth, Lawson fifth. Hadjar has just gone up to sixth place. And then, as all, George Russell has got a problem with his car. Yellow flag, he's going through the tunnel. And thankfully, and yeah, the session has been red flagged because he stopped in the tunnel. I don't know if he's hit anything, but it looks like he's got a problem. What a disaster of a day for Mercedes. Unless he can get going again, they're going to be 14th and 15th on the grid for tomorrow. By the way, sorry if you can hear a cat in the background going absolutely crazy. That's one of my cats. But yeah, red flag, and I'll let me just hide the timer, which I just forgot to stop there. We've got 10 minutes and 8 seconds left in the session. But yeah, Russell stopped in the tunnel. As the rest of the order, so yeah, Alonso 7th, Hülkenberg 8th, Hamilton 9th, Carlos Sainz 10th. Both Williams is also doing medium tyre runs. Ocon 11th, And then Tsunoda 12th, Piastri 13th. And then, yeah, the two Mercedes as Russell. I think has just been told that, yeah, he's going to have to jump out because he's not going to be able to, whatever has gone wrong, he's not going to be able to fix it on the dashboard. One thing I was going to say, though, and Ferrari, I guess, are lucky with this to an extent. Yep, Russell is getting out of the car, so he is out. Complete disaster for the Silver Arrows. 14th and 15th they will be in qualifying. I'll be impressed if they score a point tomorrow. Big chance for Red Bull and Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship for tomorrow to capitalize on this. Yeah, with Ferrari, they've done this medium tyre run. If there is, if they continue on that until, say, the final run where they may go for a soft tyre, they're running the risk of, a red flag happening at the end and then them getting screwed over. Same thing for Williams. So I'm not sure really it's a risk that is, worth it, as Russell has got back in his car, but I think that's purely so he can help steer the car as they're trying to push the car out of the tunnel to a service road where they can get rid of it. So here's Russell going up, and yeah, clearly at the rear end, you could see it on the camera, there was something let go on that Mercedes as he was going up the hill towards Casino Square. And then at this point, he was probably just hoping that he could, cruise back to the pits. But eventually it grinded to a halt in the tunnel. And thankfully he parked in a place where it wouldn't have been dangerous for the other drivers. And yeah, here comes Russell. They're pushing his car down the hill to the chicane. And yeah, they'll probably put his car just on the inside there so that they can get rid of it. I don't think they're going to push the car all the way back to the pit lane. And plus, I don't think Russell is allowed to restart the session even if they did that, because you're not allowed to get a push start from the marshals. As we just saw Zinedine Zidane, who I think has been at this Grand Prix before. Good to see him. Of course, he's not really seen him at all, really, have we, in the last... and yeah, they're pushing the car down the escape road, the other side of the barrier on the exit of the chicane. So, yeah. That's all good. Thankfully, no damage done to any barriers, and I'm sure we can get this session going again in a couple minutes. What do you call it? Yeah, we haven't seen much of Zidane since he finished up as Real Madrid manager. What was it, 4 years ago? And he hasn't gone into management since. And yeah, we wait for the what do you call it? We wait for the session to get going again. Superco says last I saw Zidane was at the Olympics. Yeah, probably not a surprise he would be there in some way to promote it or whatever. But yeah, session will be underway in a couple minutes as all the cars are now, I think, about to be released back into the pit lane. And we can get going again. But yeah, Mercedes, complete disaster for them. And I think at this point we have to say championship both championships dead and buried for Mercedes in 2025. As we're looking at Nico Hülkenberg, who currently is in the top 10. Even though we've got 10 minutes to go in Q3, or in Q2, sorry, he's, done a good job so far. And at the moment, both Racing Bulls into the top 10 in 5th and 6th. And the session will resume, it says, in 4 minutes' time at 16:44 local time, which is interesting numbers there. Obviously, that's Leclerc and Hamilton's race numbers. 16:44. But yeah, we await the resumption of action here. Let me just quickly read out a couple comments before we get back underway. Wasn't it Zidane that headbutted a man in the chest, knocking him to the ground? God, that I still remember that like it was yesterday. I remember, where I was watching that. That was one of the first live football matches I remember watching, and yeah, still one of the most shocking moments, if not the most shocking moment I've ever seen. And I remember at the time, absolutely everyone was talking about it, but still, that is what do you call it? It's the headbutt that still reverberates around the world today. Nib earlier in the chat said, what's even worse is that the engineer for Hamilton said Verstappen 3 seconds behind, and then said, never mind, he's on a slow lap. What a fucking clown. Absolutely. I mean, that is not even the worst of what that engineer has done. Remember Melbourne, where even though the engineers literally in the garage are stood feet apart, and I'm not joking, they are stood feet apart, or if they're on the pit wall, they are literally feet apart. Leclerc's engineer, and remember, both engineers, the whole team are looking at the same weather radar. Leclerc's engineer, when the rain was about to come, and it did come in Melbourne towards the end of that race, Leclerc's engineer said, what was it, Category 4 rain or something like that. Basically, a lot of rain is on its way in the next couple laps. Lewis Hamilton's engineer, again, looking at the same weather radar, feet away, said, we'll see. The fuck you mean we'll see? It's either gonna rain at some point or it's not. And again, if Leclerc's engineer is saying it's gonna rain quite a bit in like 2 or 3 laps, surely you have to be telling your driver the same thing. But no, told him almost the opposite. And then, of course, that screwed over their race. Anyway, session back underway. I have unfortunately not synced the timer up correctly, so I will wait until we get to the 9-minute marker. So George Russell angrily storms back to the pits. And yeah, shame for Russell because he probably could have got a decent result today, but not to be. The Mercedes team completely crapping out. As we are looking at one of the Racing Bull cars of Isaac Hadjar, who, again, has had a brilliant season, been one of the top rookies, and I fancy him to make it in to the top 10 for what would be a yet another top 10 finish for him. He's been in the top 10 a lot in qualifying this season. There you go. 9 minutes remain in Q2. Who will make it through? Obviously, Oscar Piastri's in the drop zone because he didn't do a proper flying lap before the red flag. Same for Tsunoda. Ocon did do a flying lap, but obviously it was quite slow. Ocon, no, I don't think we could expect to get through to Q3. If he did, that would be one of the laps of the day. Easily, one of the laps of the day. As Lewis Hamilton out there on fresh, soft tyres, and Leclerc, I'd imagine, is the same. 104 poles. Not many of them have been at Monaco. 2015 and 2019. The only pole positions Hamilton has had in Monaco. 2 poles, which for a driver of his quality is surprising, but Monaco isn't always the best for all of the great drivers. As here is Hamilton now, who begins his lap. A good example of that is Nigel Mansell. I think Mansell did have a pole here at Monaco. Well, yeah, I think he had a couple, but he was never really that great compared to, say, Senna or Prost around this circuit. So, yeah, not everyone has a great record in Monaco compared to other circuits. As Lewis Hamilton's had a decent lap so far. And Hamilton here just needs to pop it into the 1 minute 10s if he can. And that should be enough, I think. Hadjar, by the way, has just got up to 4th place. As Hamilton is on a lap that would put him quickest and into the 1 minute 10s. As Charles Leclerc does a 1:10.5. That is a brilliant time for Q2. And that's only 3/10 away from the pole position time he did last year, as Hamilton goes second. 3/10 off. So both Ferraris are, I'd say, through with those lap times. Oscar Piastri, let's see what he's doing. Carlos Sainz is on a new lap, yet again on medium tyres. So Williams really committing that strategy at the moment. Piastri goes 4th. 4/10 off the pace, though, of Leclerc, which is a lot to be losing in Monaco. So not quite sure what went wrong for Oscar. But I think both Ferraris and McLarens have done good enough times to get through. As Alex Albon on the mediums goes 5th. Carlos Sainz goes 7th. Well, I'll be very impressed if they get through on that tyre, but I think Williams will have to use the soft tyre to make sure. As here is Lando Norris, currently 3rd. Can he go back to the top of the timesheets? If he can get pole today, that would be, without doubt, a turning point in his season. Hasn't had a pole position, Lando, since the first Grand Prix in Melbourne, where, of course, he won. And desperately needs one either this weekend or next weekend. As Alonso, on the medium tyre as well, goes up to 7th place. Good lap from Fernando. As here comes Lando Norris, who goes quickest by about 100th of a second. Lando Norris goes to the top of the timesheet, so he is safe to get to Q3. Here's Liam Lawson, who's done a decent lap so far. Currently in 10th, right behind his teammate Hadjar. Tsunoda is on a decent lap as well. Here comes Lawson. What can he do? Goes 9th. Not sure if that will be enough for Lawson. So I think he might have to improve on that. As Tsunoda goes 10th, knocking Hadjar into the drop zone. So with both Mercedes out, there's only 3 drivers left in the field who can be eliminated. in this session, as Lewis Hamilton is on another flying lap. Is he going to improve? Let's see. He doesn't really need to bother with another flying lap. He's already through pretty much to Q3, and he does not improve. So yeah, Ferrari should just park, or not literally, but pit both cars and just rest them for Q3 because they've already done enough. As Max Verstappen is out there on a set of soft tyres, currently in 6th. Max only needs to improve his lap probably by a couple tenths to absolutely make sure of an appearance in Q3. Let's see what he can do. He's currently 5.5 tenths off. Can Max, with this lap, set a marker down for Q3? We're about to find out as Verstappen through the first sector, which is probably going to be Red Bull's strongest part of the lap. And yeah, Verstappen only 8 thousandths of a second slower than Norris, as he's got a Sauber not too far ahead of him, who gets out of the way. Verstappen has a slight bit of oversteer on the exit of the, I think, turn 7. And here he comes through the tunnel. And now brakes hard and late for the chicane and handles it pretty well. Piastri's on a new lap. Not improved his first sector, though. As Verstappen, about 3 tenths off Norris after the first 2 sectors. So Max might get up to into 3rd if he has a really good final sector. But yeah, I think this is just clearly proving that the Red Bull is not on the same pace as McLaren and Ferrari. No matter what Max does in that car, as Verstappen, indeed, goes 3rd, but 3 tenths of a second behind Lando Norris. As Piastri stays in 5th. I will say, Alex Albon in 6th, even though he's done a lap time on the medium, I think that time on the medium might just be enough to get him through to Q3. I don't think it's enough for Sainz, who's nearly 3 tenths slower than Albon. Alonso, I think, is right on the cusp as well. But Albon, I think, might get through on that, with the medium tyre. As Fernando saying, yeah, let's box. I cannot do any more. He is, so he's going to park it for the rest of this session. He's done his best time on the medium, and I think Fernando, he might end up regretting that decision to not do a run on the soft tyre, because it's going to be very close as to whether he makes it or not on that lap time. Isaac Hadjar has just done an incredible first sector. And Alex Albon out there, as Albon is now on the soft, he's going to absolutely make sure of an appearance in Q3. Can Hadjar make it, though? Hadjar has a decent chicane. Now through to back. I love to back. What a corner that is. And Hadjar 3 tenths up on Tsunoda. This is good enough, as Esteban Ocon up to 8th. Brilliant lap. Not sure if he'll make it through with that, but that's still a brilliant lap. Lawson goes slightly ahead in 8th. Isaac Hadjar goes 6th. And yeah, Alonso is going to be close whether he makes it through. Alex Albon goes 3rd. What a lap. Only a 10.5 off Norris. Yuki Tsunoda, poor lap. He fails to make it and stays in 12th. And Carlos Sainz has met the flag and he's out in 11th. Disaster for Sainz. But Alonso in 8th. What an effort from him. On the medium tyre, he has made it through to Q3. And so has Esteban Ocon, because Hulkenberg's pitted. What a lap by Ocon as Piastri, drifting through the exit of Rascasse, comes to the line, goes up to 4th, but What a brilliant final lap that was by Ocon, who outqualifies Sainz by a tenth. And also, Alonso, what an effort from him as well, who is definitely a driver to look out for in Q3. Especially now they've saved a set of soft tyres. But guys, that is Q2 over and done with. Let's go to the drivers who are through to the shootout of Q3. Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, Alex Albon, Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Isaac Hadjar, Fernando Alonso, Liam Lawson, and Esteban Ocon. And knocked out in Q2, Carlos Sainz, Yuki Tsunoda, Nico Hulkenberg, George Russell, and Kimi Antonelli. There's some big names going out there. Obviously, the two Mercedes, Sainz, who I really thought would make it through and really should have. And Williams, I don't know if Sainz messed up his final lap and he was on the soft tyre, but if they did not send him out on a soft compound tyre at the end, then that was a massive mistake. Because, I mean, look where Albon ended up. But there you go. But again, Albon, what a lap from him. Isaac Hadjar, very, very pleased to see him make. Also, credit to Lawson, finally delivering the performance that he should have been delivering all along. Alonso, what a lap by him on the medium. Watch out for him in Q3. I think he could be a surprise, maybe even nick a third row or something like that. And obviously, all credit must go to Esteban Ocon. Somehow dragging that car into the top 10. That is a top effort and one of the laps of the day, no doubt. I'm sure Oliver Behrman will be feeling absolutely awful seeing that Ocon has made Q3, even though Behrman had his 10th place penalty. But guys, we are just moments away from the most anticipated part of qualifying. The shootout, the 12-minute shootout of Q3. And who will take pole? For me, it's still between, I'd probably say the two McLarens and the Ferrari of Leclerc. I think Verstappen just doesn't have a good enough car to get pole here. But with both Mercedes cars out, I think Max could get on the second row of the grid, which if he can, I think he would be, I wouldn't say happy, but satisfied enough with that, given the lack of pace his car has. Watch out, though, for those midfield cars of Albon, Hadjar, Alonso, Lawson, and Ocon. I think definitely Albon could cause a real surprise here. Also, again, out-qualifying Sainz. What an effort from him. And yeah, watch out for the two Racing Bull cars who have been super quick all weekend, as Q3 will get underway in 5 minutes time. And yes, Sainz, they sent him out on the soft tyre, but he didn't do the lap. He didn't get it hooked up. And saying on the radio, just no grip on this tyre. Poor effort from Sainz, I'm afraid. As they're showing, I think, a replay of Ocon probably celebrating getting through to P10 as he says, ha ha ha, no, I can't believe it. Good job, good job. Yeah, that is a top lap by him. He's always been good in Monaco. Obviously had a podium here 2 years ago with what was, if he was in a better car, probably would have been a pole position lap. But yeah, that is a top effort from Ocon, who, you know, continues to prove why, you know, he's 9th in the championship. It's not because of luck. It's because when he gets the opportunity to showcase his skills, he is still in that midfield pack. He's still one of the best from the midfield area. But all we care about, obviously, is the fight for pole. And like I said, it should be between the two McLarens and the Ferrari. And homeboy himself, Charles Leclerc. Who will win that fight? We're about to find out. Fingers crossed, no red flags in this session. But I think what I'll do is finish up the poll in the chat. And we'll see quickly what the results are. We've had nearly 2,000 votes in this poll. Thank you for voting, by the way, if you have. Massively appreciated, of course. And we'll just see quickly what the results are once it appears in the chat, for me at least. May already be there for you, but yeah, for me it's lagging behind slightly. Astro saying Albon pole? No way. If he got pole, that would be one of the best laps in years. If he got pole, but no, surely not. I think though a third row absolutely is what Albon should be aiming for. I remember Albon has finished 5th in the last 2 races, and there's no reason why he can't do that again tomorrow. And there you go. I asked you guys who will take pole position for the Monaco Grand Prix, and 1,700 of you voted, and 59% of the vote, winning the vote, Charles Leclerc. You guys think for the third year in the last, or the third time in the last 4 years, that Leclerc will take pole. Verstappen, second, 24%. Piastri, only 8%. Surprised by that. And then Norris, 6%. Maybe a lot of people voting for Leclerc. It's more of a want than an expectation. But if Ferrari want to win a Grand Prix this season, this, without doubt, is their best chance. And I think really with Leclerc, as long as he delivers the absolute best lap he can, he's got a good chance. But if McLaren end up ahead still, then you just got to say fair play, because McLaren do have still, I think, the fastest car out there. As Alex Albon is the first car waiting at the exit of the pit lane. And there you go. Green light on. And we are underway for Q3. And yeah, I'm very interested to see with the midfield, especially Albon, Alonso and Hadjar, how those 3 get on, because I think we could see a couple big surprises. As Oscar Piastri trundles out of the pit lane. And for Piastri, at minimum, needs to make sure he outqualifies his teammate and Max Verstappen. But if he can, he has to get pole position, because a win in Monaco would be massive for his championship. And we're looking at the Australian, who is on his outlap, just coming through the Casino Square section down to Mirabeau. And there you go. 11 minutes to go in qualifying. And now on the TV broadcast, we look at Lewis Hamilton, who hasn't had pole here for 6 years. Only twice he's had pole here in the last 18 years that he's been racing here. I'd be amazed if he got pole, but it's not impossible. The car is definitely quick enough to be on pole. As Esteban Ocon, I think, has started his first flying lap of Q3, and so has Alonso. Here comes Piastri. Can he join his fellow Aussies in getting pole in Monaco? Turn 1 is good enough. Again, pole position, I think, will be either a low 1 minute 10, say a 1:10.0 or 1:10.1, or I do think it is possible you could do a 1 minute 9. And if you do a 1 minute 9, again, you will either be on pole or you will be very close to it. So let's see on these first runs who can produce what. As Piastri. Looks like a decent lap so far. And into the chicane. Handles that very well. And the Racing Bulls car gets out of his way. He's done a better first sector than teammate Norris. As Alonso now gets out of his way. And Oscar Piastri. Round Rascasse, where he drifted a moment ago. Now through the final corner. Brilliant run through the final corner. And Oscar Piastri does a 1:10.5, which I don't think is really good enough. Here comes his teammate Lando Norris. What can he do? He does a 1:10.4 and puts it on provisional pole for now. But here come the Ferraris. Lewis Hamilton. Half a second off in third. That is a massive gap. Not sure what he's playing at there. Here comes Leclerc. Has he done a good enough final sector? No, he's not. He's gone third on a 1:10.6. But I'm pretty sure that lap time of Leclerc's is slower than what he did in Q2. So there's definitely more potential in that car than what he has just shown. And yeah, these lap times are not that much quicker than Q2. Remember, pole position last year was a 1 minute 10.2. So, I think there is more pace out there. Here's Alonso, who will probably go 5th with this lap. Ocon currently in 5th on the medium compound tyre. As Alonso to the line. Goes actually behind Ocon and goes 6th. So Ocon, that is a brilliant lap by him. As Hadjar, I think, has had a time deleted. So he's down. Liam Lawson is now 7th, only a couple hundredths slower than Alonso. Max has done a good lap so far, but it's not good enough unless he has an amazing final sector to get pole. Out of the final corner he comes. Can Verstappen put on provisional pole? No, he can't. 0.2 off and goes only 4th. Which I fear for Verstappen is probably the best he'll be able to do today. Even though he's only a couple hundredths behind Leclerc. But again, Leclerc, I think, can go quicker than that. As Leclerc already been wheeled back in to his garage. So, first runs in Q3 are done. Lando Norris currently on provisional pole with Piastri 2nd, Leclerc 3rd, Verstappen 4th, Hamilton 5th, Ocon 6th. Imagine if that happens. Alonso 7th, Lawson 8th, Albon 9th, and Albon is currently on a flying lap on the mediums and is doing a really good lap. And Albon, I think, with this lap is probably going to go at least 6th, maybe even ahead of Hamilton in 5th. Here he comes through the final corner. Where can Albon put his Williams? 6th it is, about a quarter of a second behind Hamilton. But yeah, that is a brilliant lap. And if he goes out for the final run, if he has any soft tyres left, if he goes out on a soft tyre, he might be able to get 5th. Lewis Hamilton is not a million miles ahead of him, as the McLaren's already back out into the pit lane. But yeah, currently it is a McLaren front row. And of course, if you get a front row lockout as a team here, it is, unless you are Ferrari, a guaranteed win. As here's a replay of Lewis Hamilton clip the inside barrier and the entry to the exit of the swimming pool section, if that makes sense. And yeah, Hamilton can do a lot better than that. I'm not sure position-wise, though, he can, but he can definitely get a lot closer on lap time. But yeah, Ferrari, definitely, I think I've got more in the bag. But even if they produce it, can McLaren still keep ahead? That's what we're going to find out in these final 5 minutes of qualifying. The crowd expectant of an epic showdown to close qualifying here. As we're waiting for, here he comes, Oscar Piastri, who's the only driver, it says on the screen, to qualify in the top 4 every race this season. He's definitely going to qualify in the top 4 here. But if a McLaren's going to be on pole, he's got to make sure it's him. As Leclerc still in the garage, so McLaren going early. Can McLaren produce a load more pace as out come the Ferraris in the pursuit for pole? What's Oscar got then? As the car looking very aggressive, and he's done an incredible first sector. Nearly 2 tenths up on his teammate Norris. The car was looking dynamic through the Casino Square section. And Lando has done pretty much the same first sector times. Both McLarens are absolutely on it. I did say, though, a low 1 minute 10 is possible here. So there is more pace out there. Are McLaren finding it here? As Piastri looks brilliant through the chicane. Now through to back. And, 3.5 tenths he is up on Norris. What's Lando's middle sector like? Not as good. As Oscar, not sure he had a great end to the lap there, but he comes to the line and does a 1 minute 10.1 and goes to provisional pole. The final sector, though, was not great. What can Norris do? He goes to provisional pole by 0.015 of a second, and I think that is McLaren's laps done. But is that pole for the McLaren team? Brilliant effort from Norris. As much as we criticised him, he has delivered a super lap there, which could very well turn around his season. As here is Lewis Hamilton, still on an outlap. Remember, we've still got 2 minutes and 10 seconds to go yet. So, if the track has a lot more grip left in it, McLaren might still not get pole here. As Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc also on outlaps. We're looking at Lewis Hamilton, though. Does he have anything in the bag to respond to McLaren? We're about to find out. Up the hill he goes. Into Casino Square. And doesn't look as good as the McLarens, I have to say, through the first sector. And 10.5 down on Norris. Not a good start to the lap. But what's Leclerc doing in the first sector? He was super in the first sector in practice. And a lot closer to the McLarens he is in the first sector, but still not quicker. What's Verstappen doing in the first sector? He is about as close through the first sector as Leclerc was. So Max is going to be right in there. Here comes Hamilton, about a 10th off. But after the first 2 sectors, pole is possible if he can nail this final sector as Lawson goes up to 6th. Hadjar goes up to 5th. Here comes Hamilton as Leclerc does a purple middle sector and Hamilton only 3rd. He didn't do a good enough final sector. But Leclerc, can it be a home pole yet again for the Monegasque? Yes, it is! By 600ths of a second, he's done it! Leclerc has delivered the pole lap as Max is in a bad middle sector and stays in 5th. Here is Piastri and Norris have gone for another laps again, and Piastri stays in 3rd. Can Norris, though, improve enough to still take pole? Here he comes. Yes, he does it by a tenth of a second, a 1 minute 9.9. I told you that a 1 minute 9 lap time was possible, and there you go. Lando Norris does a new lap record. The first driver ever around Monaco to dip under the 1 minute 10. And that is a super effort. As disappointing, by the way, for Alex Albon, who has somehow, in the end, ended up 10th. That is very disappointing for him. But Isaac Hadjar, what an effort from him. 6th. That is super from the Frenchman. But guys, that is qualifying over and done with. Lando Norris, for the first time in 2.5 months, takes pole. With Leclerc 2nd, Piastri 3rd, Hamilton 4th, Verstappen 5th, Hadjar 6th, Alonso 7th, Ocon 8th. What an effort from Ocon as well. I think Ocon might be one of the drivers of the day, probably the driver of the day, you'd have to say. Lawson 9th and Albon 10th, and then Sainz 11th, Tsunoda 12th, Hülkenberg 13th, Russell 14th, Antonelli 15th, Bortoletto 16th, Behrman 17th, Gasly 18th, Stroll 19th, and Colapinto in 20th. Oliver Behrman, though, will line up, I'm pretty sure, at the back, or on the back row, he'll be with Lance Stroll for the grid. But let me get a driver of the day vote going in the chat. For me, driver of the day, I would have to go with Esteban Ocon. 8th in that car is just, that is a special, special lap. And a special day he has had. Who is your driver of the day for qualifying in Monaco? And as much as I've criticised him, full credit to Lando Norris. When the pressure was on, he delivered pole position and now really should win tomorrow's race. And if he does, then he is absolutely right in this championship battle. No doubt about it. Lando Norris, Isaac Hadjar, got to be in that vote. Esteban Ocon. And I'll put Charles Leclerc in there as well, because I thought today he did the best he could. But McLaren are just too quick. But yeah, for me, Esteban Ocon is the driver of the day. No doubt. That, again, 8th place in that car, that is a special lap from him. As, Nib saying, safe to say that I am annoyed, which is, yeah. Piastri 3rd, he should be very disappointed with that. He, at worst, needed to be on the front row, but 3rd is, yeah, it's not a disaster because there is a race tomorrow and you never know what could happen to Norris or Leclerc, but he had to be on the front row at worst. And he's not. But it does spice the championship up, of course, if Lando wins tomorrow and Piastri finishes 3rd. The gap would be 3 points in Piastri's favour going into the Spanish Grand Prix. Max Verstappen, I think, will be disappointed not to be at least 4th, given that Lewis Hamilton just did not do a good enough lap, really, at the end there. But I think, really, that Red Bull car, I think that's where it probably at the absolute best with a driver of his quality, and Max Verstappen in that car, that's probably the absolute best where it deserves to be. The Red Bull car, nowhere near good enough, really, to be on pole position. And Max was 7/10 of a second away in the end. So yeah, Max, did the best he could in quite a poor car, let's be honest, this weekend. That Red Bull has been more of a midfield car than it has a front-running car. So, yeah, I think Max has done the best he can, really. I mean, yeah, if he had not done a bad middle sector on his final lap, may have got ahead of Hamilton, but not a guarantee. That's one thing I do have to make clear. But yeah, Lando Norris again. We have criticised him plenty on this channel, but if you prove us wrong, we will absolutely change our view. Because I mean that's what you should do based on new evidence. If you're proven wrong, you should evolve your views on, on Formula One drivers, rather than just thinking they're what they are forever. And yeah, if Lando wins the race tomorrow, this is absolutely a turning point in the championship. Because winning in Monaco and especially delivering pole the way he did, that is going to give him a lot of confidence that he's been missing for quite a few races. So yeah, big moment in the championship. And we'll see how it affects things going forward in these next few races. Just a reminder, I will not be doing a race watch along tomorrow because even though, yes, it is a mandatory 2-stop race, it's going to be a boring race. It's going to be a dry race. Nobody's going to be able to overtake. Even if there's massive tyre delta differences, it doesn't matter. There is not going to be really any overtaking at all, and it will be a procession. As it is in Monaco, because these cars are too fat, way too wide, and can't race in Monaco. It is just impossible. So I will not be doing a race watch along tomorrow, but I will be uploading a podcast episode on Monday reviewing the events of the Grand Prix, if anything, of course, does happen. But pretty much we'll be reviewing what happened in qualifying, because qualifying really should decide the race result. So yeah, that podcast will come out on Monday. And then remember, guys, to join me next Saturday, live at the same time, 1:30 p.m. UK time, for the qualifying watch along for the Spanish Grand Prix. And also, there will not be a race watch along for the Spanish Grand Prix. There will be a podcast the day after, though, reviewing the Grand Prix. But starting from the Canadian Grand Prix, I will be doing a qualifying and race watch along for pretty much all the races in June and July. Canada, Austria, Silverstone, Spa. And then with Hungary, we'll have to see. I'll probably do a race watch along at least for Hungary, but we'll see if I do a qualifying one as well. But yeah, that's the plan going forward. Todd says, well, 2 stops, I don't expect Ferrari to be on the podium tomorrow. If you mean that they'll fuck it up and somehow not get a podium, then yeah, probably. Too many possibilities which will screw them over. As Willifon says, Hadjar, Alonso, Ocon, driver of the days. Todd says I'd go Hadjar just based on his practice issues. Yeah, did have a couple accidents in practice too. Hasn't been the smoothest weekend for Isaac, but yeah, a brilliant lap. And as long as he holds on to at least 6th tomorrow, that will be a super result. Also, I really hope Alonso finishes in 7th because Alonso, as you guys know, still has not got a point on the board. That Aston Martin, though, you have to say, since Imola has definitely, a step forward has been made. There is no doubt about that because they were not showing this level of pace, back in Miami or, Bahrain, races like that. They were not showing this. And Alonso ended up 0.001 of a second behind Hadjar. That is just how close it can be in Monaco. So yeah, Alonso. I think Alonso will be disappointed still not to be on the third row of the grid because, I mean, being that close to Hadjar, clearly it was possible. But as long as he finishes at least in 7th, I think he will be at least satisfied to get points on the board and get off the mark. Right, let me read out a couple more comments and then we'll get to the results of the poll. Edson says, sorry for Mercedes. Yeah, Mercedes, as Astro just said, big losers today. And I'd be surprised if they get a point. They've got the pace easily to be, getting strong points. Really, today they should have been probably 4th in qualifying at best, which is where I predicted they would be. But yeah, they've just completely failed. So yeah, Mercedes, if they score a point tomorrow, that should be noted as an achievement given where they started. Astra says Alonso deserves points. Absolutely. Really should have had points in. I think he was probably going to get a points finish in Shanghai, but then his car broke down. In Melbourne, yeah, he was going to get points, but then he crashed out, so his mistake. And then last week at Imola, I really did feel sorry for him because I think he deserved a few points. He genuinely had good pace and he was having a good race, but his team screwed him over. And to be fair, they screwed Stroll over as well. One team, though, that are going to be disappointed is Williams. 10th and 11th. That is not good enough from them. Albon really should have been, given how quick Williams looked in qualifying, Albon, I think, should have been on the third row of the grid there. 10th is not the end of the world, though. But, yeah, Williams did not deliver properly. And I think this obsession they had today with running the mediums, I think they committed a bit too hard to that. I think in Q3, they should have forgot the mediums, left them behind, and just used the soft. But, yeah, they decided not to. But, yeah, that's gonna cost Williams a bit. But again, shout out to Ocon. Super job by him. Also, shout out to Lawson. Finally, as I said earlier, delivering the performance that he should have been delivering all along. And yeah, I think, yeah, well, on that note, given that we are obviously done with qualifying and there's not much more to say, I think we'll bring this stream to a close. Before I do, just finished up the poll in the chat, and you guys, with 93 votes, 45% of the vote have voted Lando Norris as your driver of the day. Leclerc on 40%, Hadjar on 9%, and Ocon on 4%. Cheers for voting. And yeah, personally, I disagree. I think Ocon was the driver of the day, but obviously it's down to opinions at the end of the day with the driver of the day vote. But guys, thank you very much for coming along to this qualifying watch along. Of course, this is the most important part of the weekend. And yeah, there won't be a race watch along tomorrow for obvious reasons, because Monaco Grand Prix in the dry with these cars are brilliant for insomniacs. Let's just say that. So yeah, that's why I won't be doing a race watch along tomorrow. Again, next time you'll hear from me will be on Monday with the podcast reviewing the Monaco Grand Prix. And then make sure to join me next Saturday, live at the same time, 1:30 p.m. UK time, 90 minutes before qualifying begins, for the qualifying watch along for the Spanish Grand Prix. And then again, I won't be doing a race watch along for the Spanish Grand Prix, but I will then do a podcast the day after reviewing the events of the Grand Prix. And then, like I said, from Canada on, for a few races, it will be quali and race watch along consistently up until probably the summer break. And then we'll see after that. After the summer break finishes, we'll see what schedule I go with. But yeah, cheers for coming along to this stream. Cheers for the support. If you smash the like button, thank you very much. If you have not, make sure to do so before you go. As well, make sure to subscribe for all of that content coming up over the summer as we cover this brilliant 2025 season and what is sure to be an epic battle for the 2025 Drivers' Championship between the two McLaren drivers, Norris and Piastri, and Max Verstappen. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. Or just, click my channel name, go to my channel page and do it there. But yeah, thank you all for coming along for this watch along for qualifying. And guys, until my podcast on Monday reviewing whatever happens in the Grand Prix tomorrow, hopefully I'm proven wrong and we do get quite a bit of action. But until that podcast on Monday and until my next stream next Saturday covering another crucial qualifying session at the Spanish Grand Prix, it has been me, Shazza HD. Goodbye.